political connotation. Somebody said about Al Gore, he looks like Ned in the primer. Or somebody at an Alabama football game said something about we're sitting here like Ned in the primer, something like that. So the phrase continues to be used. Does anybody know what it means?
Or what
What you need to do is see Ned.
Right, so you know what Ned looks like in the primer.
He's a little boy. There's a Ned and Nancy, and I saw the cover of a book. It's Ned and Nancy, and it's just a little. It just showed a little boy playing with his dog.
Like the Dick and Jane book.
You said you might call him. He's out of town.
Like
that's what I'm thinking.
Like a primer reader.
Yeah.
Ned is a primer.
Who teaches library science? The library.
I thought, okay.
But
Thank you, Greg, for letting me know.
I like your dress.
Thank you. You want salad? Hurry up. I'm gonna start the meeting and just do a few brownies.
so we have to look at.
Okay, Vicki, as soon as you're hooked up.
Okay, I can do that.
Oh, laptop.
And you know,
Hey, Vicki, do we have a common drive for the board? A computer that runs that project could fetch. In short, what machine runs that project?
Okay, that laptop up there, or a laptop here.
Okay, so the easiest way to get a file and display it there where I am now is to have that computer fetch it. There should be like a common drive, like an H drive or something.
Right.
Well, that's where that email is very, I'm trying to think about this one because you can get sucked in an hour, not in a day.
It's just easy to throw it on the USB drive.
Yeah.
And there has to be a better way to set it up. There's a better way to manage that.
We'll get going here as soon as Vicki gets back with her laptop. So.
Maybe we should do it.
Easy to home and
No, you're fine. You're fine. Yeah, you're fine.
Okay, we're gonna start our meeting here. Brenda's coming on. This is not an official board meeting, so there will not be an official board vote or anything like that. This is a planning session, similar to our study sessions that we have on a monthly basis. And a few things that I thought about. I know that there was going to be some folks here, and if somebody has a very burning desire to say something about a topic, you can let me know. Just raise your hand, and I'm happy to hear your input. Now, I'm only going to limit that input to X amount of time and make sure that it's pertinent, but I don't want to not give anybody in the room a chance to say something. So I am going to try, and if you've got your agenda, we basically have 5 topics. organizational audit, LCCC master plan, board committees, board governments, and we want to review Miles' recommendation on 5 topics. I've got some time limits for those, and I'm going to try to be flexible, but if we're spending too much time, I'm going to move to the next. As I noted at the end of our last meeting, the goals, my goals, and hopefully your goals too, are to do a couple of things. One of the most important goals here is to at least give Joe some semblance of marching orders, of which I will say to Joe, get it down in writing and get it back to us, and we'll solidify that. Okay? Secondly, I want to at least walk out of here with some type of preliminary action plan on these topics. We know we need to do things with them, and that's what we're here for tonight. So, let me start off with topic number 1. And again, I will tell you, let's see, it's about 10 after 6. We are scheduled to go till 10. We'll see if we stay that long. But I will take a probably 15-minute break, an hour and 45 minutes or so into our discussions, and then if people are having real problems, we may take a couple shorter breaks, but we'll try to stay on task here. Let me start out with organizational audit. We received that effectively the first meeting of December is when we reviewed that with Dr. Boggs. We've had that to chew on for approximately a month and a half. I've chewed very lightly on it, I will tell you. I have looked at a variety of the things. And I'll refer to the audit if you do have, or the documentation if you do have it with you. There is an executive summary, and then there is a list of 19 specific recommendations in that summary. There are also 2 other major sections, one called staffing and organizational structure, and there are various recommendations. Most of those flesh out some of the summary recommendations made in the executive summary. And then the last section was called HR review and recommendations, and they are interlaced throughout the 80 pages of 80 pages of that report. So what I'd like to do first, I really don't have major comments. I guess my feeling, and I've chatted with Joe a variety of times over the last couple of weeks, I know his little wheels are churning, and as he gets acclimated to the campus and talks with folks and so on, I know he has some ideas. I know I say in here that I wanted some, a quick little review from myself. I could open the comments up to the board, or if you would like, I could switch Joe and have Joe talk to us a little bit about what his thoughts are on the organizational audit. Any preference? No preference?
No, I would just like to make one point.
Sure.
And I think that probably everyone here has some suggestion they might wish to make, and I'd like to just make sure that everybody has an opportunity to make some sort of
exactly what I want to do.
Okay.
I think I would like Joe to chat first. He may frame something, but there is a section here for the board, and I want to hear what you have to say. Sorry for the bread in my mouth, but it's going to be there a little bit. So Joe, I'm going to turn it over to you because I know that you have some prepared stuff, and then we will make sure everybody gets their more than 2 cents in if they would like. So, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I do have some things. I actually jotted them down so that I wouldn't get anything specifically. I've had the opportunity now to go through the report in its entirety 3 times. That said, I still feel like there is a mountain of background research, questions, and information that I simply need to get a handle on to be able to speak intelligently down to the finer details of the report. But let me go through a few things and give you some general observations and what I would think of and offer as the targeted goals for implementation of parts or all of the organizational assessment. The first one is, I'm sure we're all aware, but as a way to sort of set the stage so you know my perception, before we talk and look and about strategy, but specific recommendations in here. We have to remember that what we will ultimately be talking about within this report is people and impacting people within this organization. And we have to keep that in mind before we get too far into the specific details, because it's easy to get into the technical nature of what the recommendations are and the form and the policy and so on and so forth, but we will impact people. In my mind, the greatest focus has to be on the students, and the students first, and what the actions or implications of implementing these recommendations will have on students. Second, we need to be cognizant and good stewards of the resources of our taxpayers, both state and the community. And then last, we need to recognize that the people these recommendations may impact at LCCC are good people, and they're here doing good work and believing that their efforts are helping the community and helping the students, and we have to keep that up front. So I'll get off my soapbox with that, but I wanted you to know that I will always try to connect recommendations, comments, and things like that to the human element of what we're talking about and what we'll be impacting. So let me give you a handful of general observations and goals, and I'm hoping that none of these will come as a surprise. In fact, many of you will say, duh, makes sense. First, it's fairly clear in the analysis and the way that the CBT team approach this, that there's a disparity in the distribution of the way we staff on campus, especially when we're compared to the benchmark colleges in here. And I'll admit my own bias was to give a little more credence to the comparison to Casper College than others, just because they are the closest thing to a Wyoming context that we could have. We are light on full-time faculty, and in almost all the other categories, we probably have more staff than what our benchmark institutions and other institutions have. My estimation is that to continue to keep the campus functioning at an efficient level, and in this case I'll define efficiency as the state defines efficiency for purposes of the funding formula and the model. Many of the changes and the things that we would implement have to be approached, in my opinion, from a zero-sum game, at least initially. And what I mean by that is if we add or modify to a staffing classification like full-time faculty, we will most likely have to reduce from another area. That's not necessarily the case across the board. There would be resources, hopefully, where we can invest in new things. But looking at at least the projected climate of the legislative session, the budget projections, we should strive to reduce in some areas so that we can add in other areas instead of just adding across the board, if that's fair. So my goal, and one of the things I would recommend, is that we look at purposeful investment in full-time faculty where they're needed most, where they're going to have the greatest impact on students and student success, and look at the other areas of classification for opportunities to realign, to capitalize on some of the changes here to minimize the impact on any staff that might be impacted with that result. So again, focus on full-time faculty, investing in that to reconcile some of that disparity, and at the same time using opportunities to realign and shift some of this FTE from other places. Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to stop in between these if you want to see if there's any comments, or I can plow through them and then we'll do this. Turn it back.
Board members, I think that we'll just, if somebody has something to say, you just raise your hand. If not, you plow through them. And then we can come to the plate when you're done.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, sounds great. The second one, and again, just by the nature of the bulk of the attention and the feedback on the area of human resources, we simply need to get a handle and focus some attention and most likely some resources in the human resource structure, policy, procedure, documents, etc. The place that I would recommend you ask me to start is in actually developing a glossary of titles started that in the recommendation, but getting to the consistency of what a program manager means, what a director means, what a vice president means, what have you, will give us at least that broad framework to start our classification process. So that would be the place I would start. I do believe that we are at the size and complexity of an organization that we need to start to consolidate, centralize human resource functions because of the small staff that we appear to have within the human resources area. We have distributed many of those functions. The distribution of those functions has led to implementation and interpretation of them in different ways. And yes, ma'am.
Mr. Chair, I have a question on
Yes.
that. Would you give me an example of what you're talking about, Joe, when you say some of the HR functions have been placed in other areas or decentralized? Can you give me an example of what you're talking about?
I'd be happy to. So, for example, if we have multiple areas developing a job description for a similar position, and let me use a faculty position, that would go out to ultimately be posted and listed and out to search. If we do not have centralized position control and we don't have a centralized review of those, we may have criteria for these positions that may be different depending on who writes that job description and ultimately how we post those. And I think that has been one of the things that has led to some confusion about what are the qualifications of specific positions and what criteria do we use to screen applicants and how do we advance that through the hiring process.
Good example, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
President Schaefer, with regards to your comment about needing to focus those roles, one of the things that you may be looking at later, but I'm concerned is, given the staffing that we have, are we looking at trying to bring along that from the practice process, perhaps implementing the electronic system, human resource inventory system?
Mr. Chairman, Trustee Mosier, good question. I unfortunately don't know all the details of how we're implementing DataTel, but certainly utilizing the DataTel's capability to create an electronic position control and a centralized position control seems to be something we need to focus on, and we need to make sure that we actually have that. And so, as I understand it, there are elements within the DataTel system that we have not fully implemented for the human resource processes, and so I would say certainly that's something that we would want to look at, especially knowing that we're still going to have a relatively small staff to handle a massive undertaking for all of this work regarding human resource processes.
Thank you.
Which leads me as actually a good segue. We need to take a focused effort at strengthening the development of positions, the reclassification, if you will, the hiring, the evaluation processes, again, for consistency. When you wrap all of those things together, consistent job description development, putting those processes in place, implementing the technology aspects for position control and review, all of those things, we're simply going to have to look for outside help for us to do that. And I'm going to strongly recommend we look at hiring some outside consultative services to come in and help us with that. There are some wonderful organizations and people that are out there that have done this. The outside perspective may be very helpful, and certainly it has allowed the staff that we have a little the support they need to get through this undertaking. This undertaking, in my guess, it's going to take a good 6 months, and probably more because I have a tendency to underestimate the work that's involved with it. So, one major area we're simply going to have to tackle. Another recommendation or observation from the report as we go through, we have programs and services and functions of the college that are uniquely aligned across the institution. And I don't have all the history. My guess would be that some of that alignment has been because we've had a generative process of the development of our programs and services that's been driven by individuals who have a passion, have an opportunity, or have something. And so we've got some unique alignment of some of these. For example, the location of the TRIO program within an academic division most likely has a backstory of how it arrived there. But those services that are associated with TRIO are really a good fit function with student affairs.
Oh, I see.
We have some of those things that, that most likely need to be realigned and reconfigured to better streamline the way we serve students. And so we have an opportunity here and some solid recommendations of how to do that. Some of that may impact staffing as we look at either economies of scales or synergies by realigning those areas, but it's something we certainly need to spend some time on. And again, looking at any of these changes from the perspective of how we can streamline or create effective and student-centered services to help our students succeed and move through their pathway with us.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Mr. President, I think there might be a possibility of also considered under services or if you would, the academic area a little bit, because when you look at some of these areas, they provide really significant services to student success in those academic classrooms and preparing them to get into those classrooms. I'm wondering, I see where you're coming from when you talk about overall student services, but I also think that there's a real close tie to the academic area.
Mr. Chairman, Trustee Mosher, you'll get no disagreement with me there, and I will be the first to tell you I'm aware of and sensitive to the tendency in higher education to create silos based off of function or based off of functional alignment of people and programs and services. Not my intent here at all. My intent with those recommendations is to find ways to make like services more connected so that we can clarify any confusion with processes or application of those services. There are many good ways and strong ways to ensure that non-academic support services stay connected to what's happening in the classroom and with the faculty. And looking down the road, I hope to see that happen in the way we configure and utilize our committees and we create interdisciplinary teams around certain projects or certain services, if you will. The EQUIP process is a good example of how we can take on action projects with interdisciplinary teams to ensure that we have those types of contact and communication in place. So a couple more here, and then I will turn the floor back over to you, Mr. Chairman. One of the first things, and I don't see any way around this, and as much as I would like additional time to research and get to know the lay of the land, we have to start with implementing some of these recommendations with taking a look at the very top, the uppermost executive configuration of the major functions of the institution. And those would include considering recommendations and looking at the configuration and alignment of the Albany County campus within the executive arm, coming to a decision on the alignment and the focus based on executive organization of student affairs as it relates to instruction. You'll see within the report and the recommendations that there are multiple models. One is to embed student affairs underneath the instructional vice president, to be separate. Take a look at it. Where workforce development and the definition of workforce development aligns within the overall structure. There's some strong recommendations in there. So one of the things that I would bring back to you here at a very near date would be my plan for implementing a restructuring as a result of the consideration of these recommendations of the overall organizational development. And then many of the other areas that fall 2 and 3 tiers below that can be phased in and worked in as we move forward with those recommendations. But we have to come to some agreement on the overall executive structure of the institution so that we can work on the alignment of other areas and ultimately the development of policies and procedures that allow processes to flow through those areas. And then the last thing, and the last observation said that there's a lot in here. I mean, there's a lot in here, and there are good recommendations, but because they impact people, and we're going to focus on people and treat them with civility and concern, these things will take time. I think we can make headway on some of them. As I said, I will commit at this point to bringing you an action plan of how I would like to see that happen at the topmost level. down to some of the details, that would just take time. Well, I'd like to tell you that as of the next fiscal year, we can lock this portion of the staff and add this many faculty to get where we can get. It's going to take time, but we'll have that goal, and I'm assuming and hoping that you will charge me with that goal to rectify the disparity in staffing and start moving in that direction as soon as possible, and ask me to update on how we're making that progress along the way. So this would have to be a phased-in approach based on what you want from me. I can bring you various details of how we'll do that. I will certainly keep you apprised of how it will be implemented, and hope and ask that you would entrust with me with the authority to do so as I see best fit for campus. Mr. Chairman, with that, I will conclude my comments.
Okay.
Be happy to answer any questions or give input as needed.
Let me do this first. Let me summarize, because one of the things before I want to get done with this topic is, it may be one or two things. I want the board to at least, for us to have some consensus of what we would like Joe to do. We may say, Joe, we want this done. We agree with you in the next, in a time period. So that's where I want to end up in about 20 minutes to 25 minutes. Very quickly, let me summarize Joe's areas. 1, full-time faculty. 2, human resources restructuring. 3, alignment of certain programs to make them more efficient, effective, I'm not sure, but I've got realignment of certain programs. Some restructuring of the executive configuration of LCCC. And lastly, kind of more of a comment, but more of our task at hand is, I think what you're saying there, Joe, is we need to prioritize, get the right things done at the right time, and know that things are going to take time. Okay? With that, I open up to board members. Comments? Anything. Throw anything out, as long as it's organizational audit oriented.
I've got some
Kevin, I knew that.
on a jump drive, and
Okay.
could you put down on the screen and just look at a couple things?
Okay.
If we can get all of the magic to happen.
Okay. Can you continue to talk while you're working?
I can, but I talk nonsense.
Oh, okay. Would you like me to get somebody else going, and then we'll
Yeah,
get connected?
do that.
Anybody else?
Do that,
Comments? Yes.
and I'll.
Carol, why don't you go?
Joe, I'm hoping that, student services, I didn't hear that word, but maybe you're talking about student services as well. Bill and I know that most of the complaints come to the college through student services, or about that particular part of the college. And so, I think it needs special attention.
Mr. Chairman, just to know, I agree. I've heard similar concerns from students. In fact, as of yesterday or the day before, I had lunch with the students and concerns about
This one has.
clarity in the financial aid process and how we put together financial packages and what are the steps for scholarships are clearly needed. Part of that is the result of sort of the wait and see how we reconfigure and what we do with this organizational audit. But yes, coming in and approaching student-centered customer service, looking at how we strengthen those services to be focused on where students need them the most, and lining those for effectiveness is a top priority. And we're committed to that. I'm committed to that. Some of that will come from the redirection of resources to the areas that have the most impact on students, and perhaps some that don't have quite so much. You're welcome.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
question? So, to piggyback on Carol's question, Joe, when you talk about a plan to start implementing a restructuring, and you mentioned the word, I have this done before. Just give me an idea by what you mean at the top, as in, do you mean student services? Do you mean instruction, workforce services? What is it? Would you describe to me what you mean, if you know?
Mr. Chairman, Trustee Little, we have, in my estimation, 3 or 4 critical decision points to make in regards to the executive structure. One of the easy ones to pick out is the alignment of the Albany County campus.
Okay.
Do we treat that center differently than we do our outreach center at F.E. Warren and in Pine Bluffs, or do we treat it the same? At this point, we treat it relatively the same, except for its sheer scope and size. the recommendation is that takes a more autonomous role with a direct reporting line to the president, and we treat it as a true branch campus. And so that's a decision point we simply have to get to. Workforce development, specifically the credit-bearing programs within workforce development. There's a recommendation, and a strong recommendation, to align the credit-bearing programs with the other credit-bearing programs, what I think of as our transfer programs, general education and focused education transfer programs. Do we make that, I use the word subservient, but where do we align that? How do we functionally align that? And then how do we align the non-credit element that is very, very strong here at LCCC within the overall instructional arm of the campus? The student services is another one. There's a recommendation that perhaps we would want to bring student services underneath the instructional vice president in the major instructional area. I can tell you at this point that is not where I'm leaning. I'm not a fan of that option, but it's worth considering. But there are 2 or 3 other configurations there of how we structure student services from the top 2 levels.
Okay.
So the recommendation for the information technology and institutional research and planning to have a direct reporting line to the president, and have that be an executive function has some merit, and I'll be honest, I just haven't fleshed it out enough to figure it out. So I have to start from there before we really truly start looking at how the organization falls underneath.
Okay. Very good. That answers my question. Thank you.
Okay. Kevin, you ready?
I guess I am.
All right, let her rip.
You know, Joe talked about this already, and so some of this may be whipping a dead horse, but I've been a college instructor long enough to know that you should whip dead horses a lot, and just make sure they don't move. So I decided to put some data. Some of this data was in a table, and some of it was in a graph in a report, and I thought that was very inconsistent, and they really should have reorganized the data to look something like this. So I put together the ratios that they showed us in the front end. And this ratio on the horizontal axis down here is administrators per 100 students. This is faculty as total employees. Here's Casper clear up here. Casper have a fairly large number of administrators per 100 employees, or per 100 students, but they have a very large faculty. And so that they're not even really quite an outlier though. They land inside the, as we would say in mathematics, the convex hull of the data. So, at any rate, here is LCCC clear out here. We're an outlier in both regards. We have a very large ratio of administrators per 100 students. We have a small ratio of faculty as total employees, and we are the convex hull of the data set. So we're really an outlier out there. Now, one of the suggestions that actually became a point of contention last year was hiring more faculty, and we were given a budget that suggested hiring only 3 faculty, when in fact there had been a discussion at an earlier board meeting that we actually needed 20, and we managed to get 6 last year. But if we were to get 20 faculty, let's say, ultimately, we would move from here up to almost this line at 0.35. So that would take us up quite a ways. And if we were to cut down on administrative jobs by as many as 7, let's say, we would move clear back over here to just shy of 0.5, and we would be pretty close to the center of the data of all of these comparator institutions. So those are the sorts of numbers that you're looking at. Now, I've got another chart here, but once again, it's just beating a dead horse because it shows basically the same stuff once again. But I thought that what I might do is go out to my disk drive here, and I'll just mention something. You had talked about making sure that we treat people well, and so I was going to just make a suggestion on organization. And there are some other groups that are going to make suggestions on organization, and I bet the faculty would have a lot to say about this, and maybe Jeff can even respond. But trying to figure out how much administration we have is as problematic as trying to figure out how much faculty we have here, because the classifications are pretty strange at times, and people seem to cross boundaries, and some people jump from one side to the other. So, you know, there's a certain amount of massaging of data at times. But by my count, at one time, I think last summer, we had about 10 deans on campus,
And that count is uncertain because we have one position, and I'm not sure, is it dean or is it a director? But nonetheless, let's just start with 10 deans then. Let's suppose that we would drop to 6. And my reason for suggesting this is twofold. One is it organizes the instructional resources of the campus pretty well, but also 3 of those positions are currently open. And a great way to trim back in some area without impacting current employees is to not hire the new ones and then find yourself in a position of, golly, we gotta cut back now. So I was just gonna say, if we took a dean of science and health and a dean of social sciences and humanities and a dean of business and technology, I don't know what Jeff or the other faculty would have to say about this, but I think any credit program on this campus could fall under one of those 3 deans. And the nice thing about moving science back under health is that you could actually get a dean who had a background in both health and science. And the science people would actually have a dean, finally, who had some background in science, which they'd never had before. And the people in health would really like a dean who has a background in health, and I can understand that. I don't think a dean has to be steeped in what they're managing, but I think they should have an appreciation for it. And having someone with a background in science would really help. And that would be science, mathematics, and health, although I, in the past, made a suggestion about mathematics that I think would probably work as well as what I'm talking about here. And then social science and humanities, I think go together pretty well, and business and technology. And then we have got, I think, a dean of enrollment services at the present time. And the suggestion in this report is to have what they call an executive dean, and I don't really know what that means, but I'm talking about a dean in community education. And then one of the topics talked about in the report, and I think this is an important one because I didn't realize that Albany County campus had as many direct reports to Lynn as they do. 100 direct reports to one dean over there. And they had talked about making that position a provost, but just making that position a provost, you still got 100 direct reports. And so maybe something like some sort of an associate dean over at ACC. And I just want to make one more point. The trick to really making this work, to rebalancing this, you know, our divisions got horribly out of balance because some of them were quite large, a large number of direct reports, and some did not. The real trick to making it work is to balance the workload of the administrative assistants. That's where an awful lot of the trouble shows up. For example, Erin Palmquist is the administrative assistant for social and natural sciences. She is a very hardworking person. She is greatly overworked because she's one administrative assistant for a division that has, like, I don't know, the largest number of faculty of any of the divisions. 23, 24, I'm not sure what it is. You go over to health, though, there's not only an administrative assistant there are directors of various programs, and some of those have administrative assistants. So you've got a lot of administrative assistants there that can cover that ground. And that has been a problem here for a long time. Some of these divisions have one administrative assistant who is so busy she can't think straight and could use some help from other administrative assistants. So making the thing work right is largely a matter of going down a long ways into the staff and getting that balance right. So, I don't know if Jeff has any comments to make about this, and believe me, this is just a suggestion, but it just makes so much sense to me to reorganize here, especially when we've got so many open positions, and it's almost a painless reorganization. So, I don't know if anybody has any questions or anything for me.
Board members, go ahead, Al.
When you were looking at Albany County campus, one of the things there when you talked about the 100 reports that concerns me there is they have some full-time faculty, which again is an issue, but then many of those reports are adjunct faculty.
That's true.
So you don't have any kind of chair or lead faculty structure there. And you also, when I looked at that issue of taking Albany County and mixing that with Warren Air Force Base and Pine Bluffs, if you do a provost and carry all those under that provost, I don't know as we know what the cost would be in terms of providing the services fully to the Albany County campus. And I'm thinking registration, counseling, advice, if you've got all those additional services, then if you're going to go with that fully embedded entity, along with the fact that I think we've got some issues in terms of financing and support there. I mean, how do you, facilities and additionally, we see increases in enrollment, but how do you support those if you don't have a mill levy?
Yeah.
We've had some discussion on that, that concerns me. But I'd come back and I guess if you think we need a or whatever title one might put on all of the county campuses, I think one has to look carefully at what additional services or how you achieve, as you pointed out, getting that span of management down, because just changing title doesn't do it.
Yeah, that's right. And you brought up a good point. Over at Albany County, we, I'm sure, have some adjuncts teaching over there who have no full-time faculty as support. And that's, on this campus, I don't think that really occurs anywhere. I can't think where it is. We have full-time faculty who can mentor and, and help out adjuncts here. And that's not to say that it happens all the time, but we have the potential for that, and we don't over there.
And
Yeah,
then
that's
I
a big
think,
problem.
if we go back to the president's comment about focusing on student impact, one thing I think this could really help us with is it's always been a concern of maintaining the quality of program offerings at all three of those sites, whether we're talking Warren Air Force Base, Pine Bluffs, or Albany County. How do you keep those programs aligned across the hill, so to speak, or across the fence into the hills?
Well, and then keep them aligned, one more step along the way with University of Wyoming.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there's a big alignment problem when you have long linkage there. I guess I'll stop at that.
Okay.
Did you have a question?
No, I didn't have a question,
Okay.
but I would like to hear from other board members. We are running up on our time limit on this first topic. And, does anybody else have any other comments? Yes, ma'am.
This is Chairman this is not about anything that's been spoken about already. This is a new subject, and I heard that there was an organizational audit on the plant, and I don't believe the board has gotten that report. It seems like that would be important for us. On the what? On the plant, an organizational audit on the plant.
Mr. Chairman, Trustee Merrill, if I can, as I understand, at the same time, or just prior to the College Brain Trust coming on, there was a consultant or a firm that was engaged to look at the overall structure of our administration and finance areas. I haven't seen those recommendations. The recommendations and the focus of that assessment, as I understand it, are not quite through the same lens as this one. It's truly more looking at the functional operations of the plant, the facilities, the administrative areas, and those types of areas. I can certainly get a synopsis or a copy of that for the board if they would like it. I have not had time to review it. In my conversation with Dr. Boggs today, his comments were essentially, we didn't really see anything out of whack on that side, and that's why there's not a whole lot of attention paid to it in here. It's configured with a large physical plant, we have a complex operation here, and he said we just didn't see anything that we can make strong recommendation there where we should focus our attention to these other areas. But I'm happy to have Carol get you a copy of that review, and I'll give my recommendation on it as well.
I just didn't understand why that was done separately from the first one with Bob. And I guess that impacts what a lot of people, the security and the maintenance people and the cleaning people and that. So I really think that boards should see each piece of it. And maybe we don't attend a lot of time to it at the time, but we should have that opportunity.
Can I request we get that at our February 1st meeting?
Yeah.
Okay. That will be good.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, ma'am.
I think this is much for us to discuss, but Joe also recommendation number 10 was
In the
that.
summary?
In the summary.
Okay.
Was that the board adopt policies on hiring, equal employment opportunity, nepotism, and employee evaluation. We also had a discussion with Dr. Boggs saying that, we also need to decide on policy governance. In the same breath, basically, as we make these kind of decisions, or right beforehand. So I'd like to know, we as a board and with Joe's input, if we're going to charge Joe with looking at some things and starting a process of analysis and organization, how can we as a board fit in with that same process?
Couple comments on that. Item number 4 today is gonna be on board governance.
Got it.
Item number 3 is gonna be on committees.
Got it.
We are gonna attack exactly what you're talking about on those two topics.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, yes?
I think we're heading in the right direction. Anyway, on page 127, I marked this college climate, and it says that in the electronic survey, both trustees and employees rated college climate as the issue of most concern to them. And so I think we need to spend, and maybe the rest of this will take care of that issue when we get the rest of it in line.
I agree, I just don't know exactly what college climate means. I think it might be solidified as we move down the road.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I have a couple notes on that Dr. Box told us having to do with climate. He said you have to have clear policies, streamlined procedures, job titles, HR recommendations, and clear communication. So I think we're starting that direction.
I just want to have that be a piece of this conversation.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, if I can,
Yeah,
one
go ahead.
real quick comment in that regard. I've been meeting with people pretty much nonstop, right, Vicki, since last week. And I can say that in almost every single conversation where I've been offered very generously advice, thoughts, comments, and opinions. And some of the folks who have met with me are in this room, so they can disagree with me if they want, but I can say that without a doubt, every single one of those conversations has ended up in the domain of policy and procedure. Almost every single one, and the majority of our issues regarding communication, clarity, involvement in processes and decision-making resides on policy and procedure, which will ultimately be directed by your decision on governance. So it's a very good thing we'll be talking about that here.
Very good.
Any other comments on the organizational audit? If there aren't, I would like to kind of finalize this area and throw out my 2 cents on some specific direction for Joe. One is, I do think, and I'm not sure what the scope is of Joe, I know that they did spend time, because I have my little CVs, on some job descriptions and so on, but I would really like to get a handle on this classifications and what they mean as quickly as possible. Agreement, disagreement, you know, one is, I think, it's probably kind of a low-hanging fruit, and it's one that if it doesn't get tackled, you're gonna struggle through other items. So, Joe, can you give me a time frame of, and what the deliverable would be? Is it kind of a list of here's classifications of employees in our domain, and this is what, you know, for example, I don't know what a dean means versus a director versus a supercalifragilistic director.
That's Joe.
That came out because my daughter was talking about that a lot lately. I would really like to understand that, because I do get that feeling. That is part of what the problem is, or I shouldn't say problem. That can create miscommunication among all levels. So, feel for time frame, Joe? And what a deliverable would be?
Mr. Chairman, depending on how you operationally define a classification system, I can say that certainly by our next board meeting, we could have a working glossary of titles and positions at LCCC. What does a dean mean? What does vice president mean? What does a program manager mean? What does an instructor mean? And in many ways, we will need to do that to guide a lot of the reclassification.
And our next meeting is the 15th? No, our next, he said our next board meeting, or, let's make the first I think is too quick.
I would agree.
I know you like to take things quickly, Joe, but I'm not gonna let you do that.
Thank you, Mr.
But and I don't want to push, you know, if it takes 2 weeks after that, it takes 2 weeks after that. I don't wanna have to go in and do a quick job and turn around and redo and so on. But if you think that that's something that could be handled by the 15th, what you call a working glossary, that at least lists our classifications out and some type of description of what that means, I think that would be great for me. Board members?
Agreed.
Okay.
And for the record, Mr. Chairman, what I would anticipate doing with that is working closely with HR and the materials within the organizational assessment to draft that. I would then like to take that out to faculty senate, out to college council, or quality council, or something, figure that out. And get feedback from there as well, and then draft a recommendation of that. This is one of those things that, depending on your governance model, may become part of board policy or may become part of organizational policy, but we'll run it through that way and have a draft for you to consider at that next meeting.
Okay. So topic 1, classifications and what they mean by the next board meeting, not study session. The second thing, because Joe said he needs to do this, is I would like to have a proposal on executive team instruction.
Yes.
Any comments on that? And Joe, I'm probably gonna look at you and say time frame and deliverable. Okay.
While he's thinking about
Okay,
that.
go ahead.
Thank you.
Buy him some time here, Ed.
Let me just kind of ask you what you think of when you say executive team. Take me down as far as you see that.
I think I'm gonna leave that to Joe. I can tell you what it's not, or I'll start some levels. We've had a level and it's been called different things. I think what the current language is vice presidents, which are, at least theoretically, the level below the president, direct reports to the president. Where do deans fall into this? Thank you. I think it's the best depiction. Yeah. And so these boxes here, if I'm looking under administrative, right now I've got 4 VPs, instruction, student services, workforce, community development, and administration finance. Is there any other ones out there hanging? I'm not aware of them.
Well, we have an associate VP as far as I know.
What's that?
Isn't that HR? Is that an associate VP?
Well, I have somewhat.
I've seen it labeled that way.
I have, and there's these 4 boxes hanging off below the president that are direct reports, human resources, public relations, grant facilitation, and legal services. Not quite sure what those are. I would throw those in the heap. I would actually almost take a look at this page. Which page is this? Oh, this was the, this isn't necessarily from the report.
No,
This was something that they put together.
I think Peggy did this.
Peggy put this together. I'm looking at this and I guess I would like, well, it's directly referenced in the organizational audit. We've got our 4 VPs. I need something to happen with this Christmas tree sitting up here at the top.
Mr. Chairman, what I can bring you would be ultimately a configuration of the executive arms, for sure addressing the major areas within the organizational assessment, which include workforce, instruction, student services, the Albany County campus.
The Albany is not on here.
And possibly a conversation, which we should have here, now that I'm thinking about it, about legal counsel for the college and board, as well as public relations and some other, what I think of as global institutional functions. I can't tell you exactly what that looks like, 'cause I don't know yet.
I don't
so-
expect
But
it.
that would be the level of where.
So Ed, I'm trying to get definitive with you. Is it this whole page we want looked at, or do we want from here up? There you go.
I
I guess in the first part, I think that, from the 4 VPs up, including the Christmas tree,
Right.
and I like that description, by the way.
Okay.
I think that would be key, if there's time to get into some
What-
other, but I really think the key.
But I do and then there's some
Yeah.
missing pieces that are on here. We
Yeah.
know that Albany County campus
Yeah.
is a piece that's missing. Is there any other one, Joe?
I would agree that that's the executive level that we're looking at. I don't know if there's.
I like to term it as executive team, and so to make sure that I'm clear, I'm looking, what is this? Oh, is this the cover? Oh, this is the cover, okay, so this is the cover of the organizational information that was supplied to us by HR, I believe somewhere in the middle of the fall.
Well, no, it was actually last summer.
Yeah, okay, it was
right
right
actually
before.
before we actually officially began.
Okay, it was right before the org audit people came in, and it was trying to depict what we have today, or at that point in time. So, cover, top half, to be addressed along with other additional recommendations from the org audit, which means we need to we need to address Albany County campus. So, that's 2. Does anybody have any more? Because Joe's gonna walk out with about 10, between 5 and 10 things that I would like him to get focused on, which is what he told me he would like me to do, and the board to do, is to get him focused on the things that we think are important right now. Am I correct there, Joe?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So, Greg, what is that deliverable then, the second one? Is it a
I think the
plan on
deliverable,
restructure?
I think the deliverable I would like to see, and you may have a couple different versions, Joe. They had a couple different versions in our book, in their report. But what you think, after being here at Albany County campus and gathering what knowledge you can, give yourself enough time to come back and give us. I mean, you know it, it's one of these things, we all got belly up to bar on this, on what we call the executive team restructure. To make sure that it's appropriate. And we're using our resources, and we're attempting to align the areas of operations that need to be dealt with.
Mr. Chairman, what I'll commit to at this point, with your indulgence, is to have an update by the February 15th board meeting. The form and the structure of that update, I'm not sure of yet. It may necessitate conversation in executive session as in bearing on individuals. I would like to ask members of the board, and I'm not sure who at this point, to perhaps commit to help me with some of these areas. One of the areas in the recommendations I just alluded to is the staff and board council positions, and how we configure those. I can look to Mr. Lippitz to help me with some of that to get a feel for the history and the needs there, but anything that would impact a recommendation. I just got some background, both Dr. Flippy and Trustee Mosier have a background on the organizational structure, so I'm gonna ask you to work with me if you're willing.
I think the board members are willing. If Joe asks, would you please help? That would
Yes.
be great.
When the president asks, usually.
Okay, is that the minutes? Can you said that? Okay, I am going to move on to the next topic. So there are 2 items, and we will get a report somehow, some way at our next official meeting, which will be the 15th of February.
And Mr. Chairman, just quickly, I may also have an update for you, and with your approval, on some of the other things, such as exploring the use of consultants to help us with overall HR
That would be
review and things like that. Just some of those
That would be
things.
fine. I guess my expectations are this, classifications and what they mean, and at least by this next meeting, you will have an approach to executive team restructure. Okay? Got that, Vicki? You can put those right on the agenda. Okay, at this time, I'll take any comments from the public if they would like to make any comments about anything of what we've been chatting about. Jeff?
I'd just like to make a comment.
Sure. Speak up loud, because I won't make you go to the microphone.
Dr. Kilty asked divisions, and I think, first of all, I think faculty are supportive definitely of restructuring. I certainly haven't shared, I have not seen that document before, so I can't speak on whether faculty would be supportive of that specific restructuring, but we are definitely, the faculty I've talked to are supportive of restructuring of academic divisions, and more importantly, pulling all of the credit programs under the academic vice president, and so I'm glad to see that Dr. Cook did some work on that, and we are supportive of them.
Good. Anyone else? If not, I'm moving on to the next topic. Next topic on our agenda is the LCCC Master Plan. What I thought I would do very quickly, since we have just recently finished this, and I don't want to bore you, if you do have your master plans, what I would like you to do is go to section, you've got one, haven't you? Section 6, which is implementation of the master plan.
Page 74.
Page 74, you're correct. So quick background, I don't know if there's been one done prior. 2004, a master plan was put together for LCCC. It really did not address the Albany County campus because the Albany County campus was either under construction or getting ready. In 2011, we updated our campus master plan with a large emphasis on the Albany County campus because so many things are going on over there. You can read and reiterate this. One of the purposes of the master plan is to give us some guidance of where we're headed, mainly with physical facilities. And I will say that physical facilities are nice in and of themselves, but if they do not support programs and where we are going as a college, we have to have that connect. So I'm gonna leave that out there. One of the things that I would like to do, because it is important, I think, in the next 3 to 4 months, is that I get some consensus, again, on what we think our priorities are on working on some of the projects that we have talked about. If you look on 74, we had kind of 2 sections of projects, A1 or A column or A section projects and B section projects. And what distinguished between the two was A section projects probably had quite a bit more planning done. There were at least ideas of where funding may come from. And B section projects did not have as much planning and had not solidified on the funding side. What has occurred in the last 4 months, I gave you copies of at least the initial drafts, is we did ask the VP of Administration to put together what we'll call pre-phase 1 documents, and those address a Performing and Fine Arts Center, a FlexTex building. There's the B1, B2, B3, and B4 items, page 72. What we do with those is really going to get driven from the Facilities and Finance Committee, so we'll talk about that under that topic. But that work has been done, and I'm glad that at least has been done or attempted. Okay? Let me shift over to column A, or to the A section. We have A1, construction of a BW center. We have A2, finishing the 3rd floor of health science. Let's not talk about that anymore because we have already allocated the money for that. I believe it is going out to bid in the next couple of weeks. It is projected to be done by the next academic year. Okay, so we can tick that one off our little list. Okay. A3, replacing of existing horse stalls. I'm not quite exactly sure where we are with that. Our next Facilities and Finance Committee meeting will address that and get up to date, but I do think that they've got a plan, and that is a fairly quick project. Okay. A4 does combine a variety of projects that probably need to be fleshed out a little bit. We know we're addressing parking at both Albany County campus and here on Laramie County campus. So that's being worked upon. I know some site lighting. There are some conceptual designs coming up with that, and again, I will charge the Facilities and Finance Committee to to report back to us on what is going on with those projects. So let's see, A2, A3, A4 are being worked on. I guess, Joe, I'll let you go here in a minute. A1 is hanging out there. I guess my biggest question on A1, and to either confirm or not confirm, if that is a high priority for Laramie County Community College Board of Trustees. Yes, sir.
I think one of the things I would like to know about that project is that building going to be dedicated to UW classes, or will we be able to use the classroom space as we see fit?
I don't know specifically. We do have a phase one. My understanding that it is dedicated to both activities.
So it would be a general purpose, sort of
General purpose classroom with some types of offices. And we have not set that, and that's why I'm asking you this now, is we do need to dive into that and come to get to some solid understanding of what it is and move forward. So, if it's gonna have both, I mean, go ahead, Kevin.
One of the things that I found interesting this afternoon when I looked at the email that came from John, and all of us have to know this, the country is awash in natural gas, and natural gas prices are going to be low for a long time, no matter what happens, and that's a large portion of state revenue. Is that going to impact, and it looks like it's going to impact a lot of things, and it's going to impact construction budgets here. So it could very well be that this is the last big wad of money that we see for a while for construction. And that now does raise the issue of, is this what we should use it for? But our problem was, that was the only project we had in a position to go forward with the commission.
Correct.
And so we sort of got pushed down that route, and we still don't have anything else that we could suggest as an alternative, do we?
Well, I guess what you're trying to say is looking to the state for money is probably not the best place to look.
And I think that's exactly right.
I don't care if it's the UW building or if it's the knitting building, doesn't matter. I guess I will say, Joe and I met with the chairman of the LCCC Foundation this week. We had a conversation about, what do we call it, capital campaigns. I think, and this is my opinion, that we need to change our thinking on funding. We need to use the resources that we do have, and we don't really know what they are. We do have some bonding capacity. We have never gone out and asked for capital facility money in the private sector, ever, that I know of. Maybe somebody can enlighten me, but we have not done that. We have not organized for capital campaigns. I guess that's the real question that I have in regards to this building. It could be some other building. There needs to be an impetus for us, because I can tell you, and again, I'm not a graduate of Casper College, but I did go there. If I look to Casper College and I look at what they've done up there, they have a pretty good process of using all of their resources, private funds, state funds, bonding capacity, and there may be others. So I guess my recommendation, I would like to keep this a very high priority. If the biggest thing that we get out of it is get it headed in the right direction of how we are realistically going to fund capital projects into the future. So, go ahead.
Yeah. Mr. Chair, I absolutely agree with you, and I know what Kevin's saying, but I think what we can say is state funding is now a barrier that we need to figure out how to cross. And I am not willing to give up on this project because we have that particular barrier. And so I agree with you. I think we need to move full speed ahead, keep going with it, and figure out different ways to fund it. I'm with you on that.
Yes, sir.
This doesn't follow on that same comment, but I am wondering, how much bonding authority do we have left? Have we not used? And is that just general obligation bonds, or is that revenue bonds too?
I don't know. Have you done any homework since we talked last?
Mr. Chairman.
I haven't expected you to, but you may have that little tidbit of
I
knowledge.
can't give you any more than my impression at this point. And my impression is that there is capacity in the bonding authority. I do not know enough about revenue and where we're at with existing commitments
know the Federal Reserve has said they're gonna try to keep interest rates near zero for the next couple of years. So this is a great opportunity to use those at fairly low cost to us. And so,
Go ahead, Joe.
And Mr. Chairman, one of the things I guess, a recommendation, if you will, and then we'll have a conversation on that. Prior to thinking about funding strategies in any of these projects, it would be very, very helpful to have a conversation and set the priority where you're going, what's important and what do you want to do. I would then recommend that your committee, the facilities committee, probably with some
Or maybe another.
ad hoc members get together and look at developing let's say the bare bones facilities plan that would actually look at different funding streams, different ways to approach that, and actually come up with a plan of how we would approach each of the projects you set as a priority.
I was going to say that, but you took my thunder.
Sorry.
No.
Bare bones facility plan.
I guess my feelings, and then I'll jump back more into the purpose of the UW building, and maybe if people don't know the history of that. That building has really been pushed by the University of Wyoming, partly because they are in a competitive situation for students. They want to put themselves in a position to provide services and get the revenues wherever they need those to be. They've already done it in Casper. They've been doing it a long time in Casper, maybe not in the exact right facilities, but they got a UW center going up in Casper as we speak. That's how we first got into this. They came over and approached us. We had some vague ideas to say, wouldn't it be nice to be able to offer, and I don't know exactly what there are, but I can kind of tell you they'll probably be in the healthcare side, probably in the education, secondary or education side, and some in the business side, but be able to offer four-year degrees in Laramie County. And also have the opportunity to offer certain types of master's degrees in Laramie County. Again, some of these tend to be in the healthcare side because those students are full-time workers. They either don't have time to get over the hill, and UW knows this, some of them have the time to drive down to Fort Collins and Greeley and other places. That's how this building came about. I don't know if I would tackle it by myself. I mean, you have to have a partner. And I will say that UW hasn't always, you know, there are other partners out there. Not that I want to shun UW at all. I think they're the preferable partner. But if the concept is to be able to offer, and again, we're not giving out these degrees, but we are providing and facilitating these types of opportunities in our community, which I do think is part of our mission. That I want to run with that. And, you know, it's a pretty concrete thing. I don't know where we can go with it. And Brenda, your point was well taken. We cannot let the legislature, the state budget, necessarily be the barrier not to attempt to move forward with this. So, at least my recommendation, and I would like to get some consensus, it's in our report, that this be our #1 priority. We may find out that that may not be the one we want to go, but I definitely want, as Joe suggests, that we have some methodology in place where we're going to go figure out what we need, we're going to figure out how we're going to get it, we're going to take the leadership role in attempting to try to provide the needed facilities in Laramie County. Yes, Kevin?
When we take a look at the A list, the University of Wyoming building is on it. We know that we do need some classroom space on campus because we're kind of clogged up at certain times of the day. So it is a resource that we could make good use of. The things on the B list that you look at, the top of our B list, I think, if I can't get that one.
Fine arts.
Oh, here's the Fine Arts Center.
Yes.
And we know that that's going to be an expensive project, and we have not ascertained how much help we can get from the community. But that's one that is going to live or die by what we can, by how much help the community provides. The Flex Tech building, which I think is second on that,
Yes?
is one that really requires industrial partners. And if we can't get industrial partners to pony up on that, then there maybe isn't the demand.
Correct. I agree.
So, if we just look down, the library expansion, I don't know where that sits in the Center for Childhood Development, I don't know where that sits. But if we look at the thing that we kind of laid out as the top 6 priorities, And I just think we had a lot of discussion about these priorities previously. I don't think it's really changed.
Okay. Yes, Ed?
Well, I would think it fits the political landscape too, because you have important people saying we only want one university, so to speak here.
Yeah.
And this facilitates the continuation of the services that one university can offer. And we have for a number of years had the request for assistance in the business offering bachelor's degrees in the business area, health occupations, where each one of that has come along in more recent times, and I'm sure there are others, education, of course. But it makes a lot of sense, especially if you insist that it's not just an administration building, that this is a classroom, and have that combined service with facilitating registration and working with the
Okay. Have I said enough?
Yeah.
Joe, go ahead.
Told you, you didn't let me speak
That's
last
fine,
time.
Joe, go ahead.
Speak this time. A couple of thoughts and perhaps just a slight deviation from that recommendation. Many wonderful topics and projects on here that are worth looking at. Them all together are probably too much to bite off at one time, but I think a combination of them are certainly doable depending on how we define the span of the facilities expansion and renovation plan with that. I would ask you to let me and individuals on campus and the campus community to perhaps whittle this and refine this list, knowing that these are your priorities, from the campus priorities, but perhaps we can't take them all on at one time. Whittle that back into sort of the first phase, if you will, of this, and to come back to you and say, here's what we'd like to approach. The one thing in my mind that's sort of glaringly missing here, I should say glaring, and they're under B9, is what's in the facilities condition index document that you were doing here. We have a lot of facilities on campus that can use some attention. We still may see major maintenance monies out of this legislative session. It sounds like the Joint Appropriations Committee has committed $10 million for that. So there may be resources for it. I would like that to be considered part of it, because we have to take care of what we have now as much as we have to look at it and do that.
In connection, you brought up an interesting point. In connection with that, and this doesn't have anything to do with the master, but it does have to do with the budget. And that's coming right. I really feel like we need some budget to send our maintenance people to schools. They have not been able to go to schools. And this place has equipment of peculiar kinds all over the place. As you know, in an automotive dealership, if they didn't send their maintenance people off to schools, but the manufacturers, then they'd have trouble repairing cars. We need more education for those guys, and that isn't just coming from me. Those guys have told that to me. They need more education. The education dollars to them have been very limited, and they have been used, I don't want to say inappropriately, but they haven't been used to maximum effectiveness. And those people, if you see 4 guys on campus looking up at some sort of a system overhead, and you say, why are there 4 guys working on that thing? Well, it's because they haven't had training on the darn thing, and they're putting 4 minds together to try to figure out how to fix it. And there just has to be some professional development money for them, in addition to other places on campus.
Okay, get that in your notes, Joe.
Yes, sir.
Are we approaching the point on the facilities planning where we're talking about, again, the budget comes up, but we're looking at saying we probably need to consider the couple $100,000 more that it takes for phase 2? And
Funny you would say that.
we need to have that.
And based on my conversation, or our conversation the other day, and Joe and I really haven't had a follow-up then, so we'll have it here publicly. My feelings, and this is in relation to this UW Center, from what we believe, and the number is anywhere between 400 and 600, people throw different numbers out, to complete phase 2. And we have offered up 200, I believe we have it budgeted. Carol isn't here. We have it budgeted. And sometimes I get secondhand, third-hand, etc., that says, you know what, well, we can't do that because UW's not gonna pony up theirs, cause they've gotta ask the legislature for it and so on. I'm really of the mind, and again, this is a mindset thing, I'm going, you know what, why don't we just pony up and get the phase 2 done?
Yeah.
Okay, if we wanna make something happen, we have gotta take the initiative to do it. May need to be looked at in our budget for this year to say, hey, we're gonna take on phase 2 and take the leadership role in this. We will get it worked out, if we're gonna be in partnership with them, that things have been divided fairly. That can be taken care of later. But if we want this thing to move forward, we're gonna have to take the ball and run with it. We cannot sit back and go, guess what? We only have half the phase 2 money, so we're gonna put this thing on for another year and a half. I don't wanna do that. I don't wanna do that. So that's why I say, I think if the board says, hey, let's go after UW, this UW Center, I say that we go full blast after it, we do exactly what Joe said. If we come out of it, the worst thing that we can come out of it, we may abandon the UW building, but we at least figured out how the heck we're gonna go push for facilities into the future. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't wanna abandon the UW building. I just think that we have got to take some action, and pretty quickly. There's some opportunities with the foundation. They're looking at trying to get themselves repurposed, restructured, etc. And we need to help them and push them along. We need to give them guidance and direction. And say, fundraising is not just scholarships. Fundraising is capital campaigns.
I just would like, I'd like
That's
to
the
say
game.
something if I may.
Sure.
I haven't had a chance yet.
Go ahead.
The university in the legislature manages usually to get everything they want. Now, they may not this year because of the problems that are there. But I agree with what was said earlier, and I think it was Kevin. We need to check the bonding more than anything else. You can talk about the foundation raising funds. The hospital foundation is gonna raise $10 million for a cancer center. People only have so much money that they're gonna donate to various projects within the thing. And the rest of it's gotta come from bonding and from legislative action. And you can't expect individuals, yeah, they'll have a nice big sale and raise $100 here and $100 there, but I'm sorry, this is major money. And we can't ignore that the university gets their way the best of anything. I really think Steve Damer's working very hard at getting stuff done, and so is Jim Rose, and getting all the money they can to the college. But you notice how they just sort of put a lot on the back burner and say, well, yeah, I agree with you, we've got to proceed, we've got to go forward, but I think you need to look at bonding as the prime way rather than going out and begging.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. I do. Thank you for that comment.
It's cheap.
Yes, and I agree with you on that. There also is another reason why we would like UW as a partner. Of course, because we know that they get money better than we can. So, all right, without getting, Ed, go ahead.
I just want to add on that, and make sure I'm understanding here that not only are we looking very positively toward the UW Center, but we're also in the mix here asking the Fine Arts and Performing Center to be looked at also. We're not ready perhaps to ask for budgeting money, or we might be. We just need more information.
And we're gonna talk about it in the committee side, but what I will say is this, I think we need to create how we are gonna move forward with facilities into the future. Okay?
Okay.
And put whatever, again, we talked about processes and ways to do things. Here's some things that I noticed, those initial reports that came in, they were all different. Different people did them. And I'll just throw, this is just an idea. We may say that we want to focus on some of this stuff and make sure that we do our homework and take the leadership role, that we may take it upon ourselves to have a mechanism in place, either an employee type or a consultant type, that helps us put these things together so we're in front of the curve. There's a reason why Casper got it, okay? You cannot solicit money unless you have figured out what you need to do. There's a reason why, I don't know why River and always gets money for something, but I can tell you, they're farther down the road than we are in our projects. So, I guess what I'm asking in this area, and again, I just wanted to go through and I wanted to confirm, I think UW ought to be our number one priority. I think the other items on B1 we've started working on. I feel good that we're moving in the right direction. I look at two major priorities. One is, as Joe said, let's come up with a strategic plan on how to get this UW building done. Okay? That's one. Two is, in the process of doing that, let's determine what we need into the future to continue, because if you really look at colleges and universities, capital campaigns don't start and stop. They are a continuous process at all times. If you can get the capital campaigns going, then you can figure out where you're going to use that money. Now, on the other side of that coin is you can't market to get the money unless you've got the project and have it planned far enough down the road. So I see really two things happening. Focus in on UW building, and two, focus in on how we are going to create the mechanism to get facilities built on LCCC, for LCCC programs. So I guess if you support that, that's the direction I want to go into, and I think that, it's a direction that we've been looking at for a while. Those would be the two things that I would like to get accomplished quickly, within the next 3 months. And it's going to take board participation for that. Specifics for Joe in this area, I think, Joe, if you could work with the Facilities and Finance Committee to come up with this strategy, even if it's an outline, I will pledge my time and resources to do that also. Okay? So that takes care of that piece. And then I think out of that, and I think it may come down out of the specific strategic plan for a UW building, that we also come up with recommendations for how we are going to move towards facilities into the future. Which means, do we need to have some planning resources on board at hand at all times? Do we need to get coordinated with whoever our fundraising arm is going to be to do capital campaigns? And I guess the third piece that we did talk about, there's there's two pieces to the planning here. There's the building planning, and then there's the financing planning. And I guess we won't forget about that, because I have had some people that offer. There's people, that's all they do. They sit down, Bill, and they figure out, okay, you got a $15 million project. Here's all your resources that you can tap from. If it's bonding, if it's private, if it's governmental, or something else. We don't even really know, and we've never known. So.
The hospital just borrowed $100 million, so I think we're in shape to borrow some.
So I would like to see two things come out, and I guess, Joe, if I give you the task there, I'll kind of give it between yourself and myself in this Facility and Finance Committee meeting, strategic plan for UW. And that probably will include getting, if it's Buchanan, if it's, what's the other guy's name, Richards? Don Richards? Probably Don might be the right guy. Get him over here and go, look, I shouldn't say mess around. We've never been messing around. We're going to get really focused on this, and let's figure it out, Don. And come up with something concrete. And then secondly, out of that, I think that we need to have some recommendations as to how we move forward into the future with facilities. The planning side, both physical and funding, and so on. I don't have a lot of details on that, but so if I look at an action plan for our president, I think that's pretty clear. You got the commitment, you can put it in the notes. Chairman Thomas and President Schaefer will have a strategic plan for UW building. I'm going to probably put that to be the middle of March. Give us that much time, because we know that we have the legislative session going on. We may not get to the people we need. We get quicker, but I would commit to the middle of March. I don't know exactly what meeting that is, Vicki, but yes, ma'am.
Greg, Joe mentioned something about,
Oh.
that him and his staff pared down this list.
Yes.
Is that later, after the
No,
strategic
no, what
plan?
I would, so if I look at Joe, it's the strategic plan, and then I think the other piece of our mechanism, that's gonna come. I wouldn't
Okay.
charge Joe with that right now, but yes,
Okay.
Joe, I would like you to take a look at specifics of what you think we can do on anything on this list. And actually, we know that B9 are things that can be dealt with, and need to be dealt with. That just wasn't high on our talking priority list, but it may be high on our priority list. Okay. Any other comments on the master plan side? Okay, we're gonna take about a 10-minute break. It is 7:35. We'll convene again at 7:45. Well, that'll be something. All we can do is say, this is one of the highlights. We can't. How are you? I know. I don't want to get wrong.
It was on the way back, it was a little American, the snow was terrible, I got down to the straight line, windshield, everything, and fell out of the car.
Yeah.
Oh, God, yes. Well, and you're probably at that point.
We just did the everything discussion, that needs to be personality.
That was pretty interesting.
It's interesting, a little scary too at the same time.
Uh-huh.
But it's time.
That drove in, wandering around.
They really don't know what the and our job is to help them.
Just to make yourself feel good about it.
You know anything about that?
Hey, Rod, don't ask Rod about it.
No, and then you said, "Ron, you guys need to stick with it. A lot of people go to your meetings and tell us what's going on.
So don't ask.
Hello, we're 5 minutes over.
You know, I'm good. I started off real slow and then I went to the end.
I want all your
And then
officers
this
on
other
board,
guy
just like
out.
Trevor,
Started off
Butcher.
poop.
Do you know how many, because we did that before you came on, you know how many problems.
And they're really high quality. And so I'll send you that.
Well, we'll see.
I have a funny feeling it's sort of a long day.
I just want to ask.
And they only have so much time, and so then I just stay. So I don't know. I'll have to keep in touch with Mrs. Boring about when I can get here and when I can't. It's okay, the first one in third grade, I
We got 6 last year.
I'm glad. Sometimes if you don't have much money, it makes it easier to set your parameters. Whereas if you've got a lot of extra money, then everybody wants a piece of the pie. So they go past it.
Virginia is good at customers.
So we'll see what happens. Try it again. One,
So we never can get this out.
activity.
Well, yeah, and I think what happened was we didn't have a job yet, we had nothing, so we asked. Then we started getting funded by the state, we forgot to stop it.
Especially if they're gonna make the decision on where the new school goes.
You're welcome. We didn't even
Yeah,
have
I-
a scholarship last year.
I do. Yep. Yeah, I just thought that. In fact, I went down and talked to him about that.
Oh, crap. That's all right.
Are you going to?
Even that, I mean, I think you kind of assimilate that to like the federal government.
Well,
There's the,
we don't make
we
it,
have to take decisions like the county laws. Good point.
Milling around now.
Oh, yeah, kind of.
Well, you should stand in front of the camera and give a halftime report now.
I can't do that.
You could be a talking head pundit now.
I know what, Lynn.
I don't know how much you bring in.
So on Monday, until Friday, remember we're gonna make it something different for you. The things are good, the less we have.
But you're right. Well, we didn't know.
For the drive home.
Of course, he
Did you get a good close-up of Kevin when he kept moving towards your camera? That big. A little big and then go back a little tiny bit.
I wanted to make sure I showed up on it.
No, you got I think this is really cool.
Yeah.
Hey, how are you?
Oh, I'm good. No, we're fine. Although, you know what? Yeah, I mean, I Okay, what's the comments here now?
You're talking, you're doing action plan.
You're moving right along, that's good.
Well, it depends. I'm gonna switch our next agenda item, we're gonna jump to governance right away. Cause our committees need to be structured right away. Kind of got that in the wrong order.
No, it's going very well. Clicking along.
Coffee, please.
I'll pick away at it.
Here every day talking to clients.
Yes.
People just gotta, I just think you gotta get over it and trust that we're not gonna like it.
No, it's not.
No.
It's
Oh.
not. It's on campus.
Well, you know,
There's that.
I hear you. There's probably some things. You should go and reach out a little bit. What I need is who are some of the groups that are afraid. Which groups is on the business good? Oh. I know. Well, you gotta, well, then you tell. Well, I wanna talk about the actors, because as Miles is walking out the door, he says, "Oh, man, he's funny." He goes, cause he's saying, "Oh, I got the whole thing." I go, "Well, where is it?" Well, you do this. Hold on.
Have you read all that book?
I did read it once, and the main thing I read about is
You do, but productive. It's a much more better than what like here. We just gotta talk about.
Or shares the others.
Wherever you go, it's all.
Greg, it's time for start.
Stay on track.
There was a reason.
And the other time I had to do a major
Call me. That's
Oh my God, I would have had to stay in one.
Okay. Let's reconvene. And I am going to take the liberty of switching 3 and 4, mainly because 3 has a lot more meaning if we talk about 4 first, which that is board governance. I guess what I'd like to do here is get some comments from the president again, and we can have a lively discussion, or it may not be that lively. But also want to, again, have an action plan as to how we're going to address the topic. So, Joe, I'm going to give you the floor and talk to us a little bit about your thoughts on governance.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll do my best to be brief and to the point here. I mentioned in many conversations across the board my thoughts on policy governance, and I'll be honest and upfront that witnessed it work well. I'm a fan of policy governance. Policy governance requires commitment, training, full development of organizational policies as well as an understanding of board policies like that. My review and I guess my estimation of this board's transition to policy governance in the early 2000s was that we had a board that was trained to move there, spent time working on the board's processes, but we never made the full leap into modifying and looking at the way the organizational policies and procedures needed to be amended to fit policy governance. And so, for example, we have organizational policies and procedures that involve policies that should no longer exist because we moved to board governance, but do, and so procedures are still present. Policies that connect and invoke actions by the board that under policy governance probably shouldn't have. So we were, and it seems you have been one foot in and one foot out. Compounding that was issues with trust and the turmoil that I won't go back through here in regards to the interaction of your executive officer and the board. So all that said, folks probably aren't all that fun and committed to policy governance because of all of those things. So you have an opportunity and you have a fresh slate to decide on a couple of things. One, we like policy governance, let's give it a run again, let's go through the training, let's do the job we wanted to finish back then. Or two, let's look at moving back to more of a traditional model of policy and procedure governance that I get the sense many of you would probably be more fond of because it does provide you a better connection to organizational operations through policies and procedures as well as involvement, depending on how you configure committees, in key operational facets of the organization, whether it's academic affairs, finance, facilities, human resources, staff and compensation, what have you. What I can tell you is that my ability to do what I think you hired me to do, my ability to help the campus move past and get to the work that you want the campus to do, all honestly hinges on how you decide you want to govern the organization. Because, as I said earlier, what I'm finding and exploring and seeing is that the majority of the issues dealing with communication, with trust, with decision making stem from a lack of clear process and procedure. Well, depending on how we structure process and procedure, is contingent on how you decide to govern. Because we either have board policy and procedure manual that we interpret and utilize and develop, or we have organizational policy and procedures and we focus on the ends and the monitoring of your one employee to do that. It has other ramifications down the road and how we traditionally interpreted the separation between the executive arm and the board and all that other good stuff. But regardless of what you decide, one of the first things, outside of what you've already charged me with, should be to do an entire audit, review, and updating, comprehensive update on policies and procedures for this campus. And I would actually recommend that we commit a day, somewhere in the very future, to have a facilitated retreat just around governance, policy, and procedure, and give me the appropriate direction on how to do that. Now, I know you directed the staff, you directed Miles, the staff, to sort of get the policies online, maybe pass a message when that happened, have people review them, get them out through this good but very cumbersome consultative feedback process and get those up there. I've asked the staff to hold off on any more review of that until you can decide how you want to govern, because what I don't want to do is have to ask the campus to go back through and review and update policies because of a change in governance perspective. So I'm happy to share with you my recommendation at this point if you would like it. I recommend that you probably make the choice and start moving towards moving back towards a traditional policy procedure governance model, and then charge me with conducting a comprehensive policy audit, review, and update, and that we set a time in the very near future to bring a facilitator in to take us through a day long or half day long or however it turns out retreat and get us started down that road. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, I'm still trying to chew on it here a little bit.
Joe, I love the words. What do you call this other model? Just policy and procedure model? Tell me what's the core structure of that? What does it mean? And I'll give you a little bit of my insight of how I feel, what our responsibilities are. If I really look at it, you know, one is we have a responsibility. Number one, we're elected officials. That makes us a little different than a variety of other places, like where you came from. You didn't really have an entity like this. And I don't know how prevalent it is in other states, but be it that way, we are elected officials. So I think inherently, and I feel pretty strongly, and I know most of the board members well enough, that we have a responsibility to the community. And as Bill well knows, because he probably gets called more than anybody, they feel that you are the sounding board at times. Am I correct with that? Yes. So we're elected. I think that we feel as though we have a responsibility. As I look at the operations, and again, I've been around this arena here about 8 years. Budget, critical. That's one of our main responsibilities, is that we do approve the budget. Now, there's a lot of things inherent to that, like make sure that it's done correctly. Are we using the right resources and so on? I don't know how good a job we've done that, but budget. We are the ones that pass the budget. Two is we do have to provide oversight to the college, and probably most importantly, guidance to the executive, CEO, and executive team. Without that, I guess people just run off and do their own thing. And again, that gets back to our responsibility to the community. I don't think that that's what we need to do. So, budget, guidance, oversight as to how this college operates, and I'll throw the planning side in there. Then I think one of the third things, and it's a little bit harder for me to articulate. God, I never thought I'd say that word.
It's a good word. You should use it 3 or 4 times in many years forever.
Hard for me to describe. But I do think we have a responsibility, and I'll call it more, oh shoot, now the cat's got my tongue on it. To make sure that this college doesn't, it practices the God, I had it, you know, what do insurance guys do? No, not a. Make sure bad things don't happen here, because we are ultimately responsible for that, and those tend to revolve around the personnel HR side. Okay, which means that we ought to make sure that we're fair on how we deal with people. Make sure that we're, and not just with employees, but external people and so on, vendors, etc. And that's how I really see, that's my kind of homegrown thought process of what our responsibilities are. Now, I say that because how does that work into a governance model?
Chairman, Dr. Kilby, I thought he had a comment, but if not, I can.
Well, I don't know. That I guess I jumped in and
go ahead.
Talked about articulation. We can go beyond that, but we were talking about really examining the governance model for the last year, and we've gotten sidetracked at various times in other issues. And you know, I have not been a fan of policy governance. I really dislike it. I think it prevented us from actually fulfilling our duty according to statute at times. The board seemed to be extremely unaware of what was going on at the college, and particularly in ways where the board really should have known what was going on at the college with regard to hiring, with regard to treatment of employees and students, and things that were really big risks for the college in many ways.
Well, you hit it, risk management. That's what I was trying
Well,
to say.
you can't do risk management unless you know what's actually
No,
going
that's
on.
exactly right.
And this board was not alone in that. If you go out on the internet and you start looking at policy governance, there are other people who have been caught in the same position. School boards seem to have adopted policy governance a lot, and they have been caught, short-sighted all of the time, many of them, because they took this governance model to heart, and they really didn't, they gave too much power to their executive, with all due respect. And these were deserved it. They were secretive, and they had other agendas at times, and they would play various board members against one another. And we know to some extent that policy governance can be used to divide board members against one another and divide boards from administrations and so forth. It's a very useful wedge in that regard. Now, Ed and I looked at some of the statements in our policy governance that I thought were just crazy. One of them says that the board can ask for information, but if the executive or the administration think that information is too cumbersome to put together, they can just tell us no. And I thought, well, in what sense are we the employers of the executive if they can just say, no, I don't want to do that, that's too much trouble for me to do.
And you won't understand it anyway.
What? And I might not understand it anyway. But at any rate, at any rate, I wouldn't be opposed to giving policy governance a real try if we could figure out how to convince them that we are fulfilling our obligation to the taxpayers, to the students, and the other groups that we're supposed to serve. And it has to be credible. Joe mentioned communications. I'm going to add one more word, credibility. And just communicating is another one. It has to be credible. And I just don't think policy governance ever passed the credibility test for me. You could go through all of this mumbo jumbo and so forth and put on the war paint and chant chants and so forth, but there was no credibility that we were actually really governing the college. And this wasn't my perspective. I can tell you that there are a couple of fairly high state officials who told me at one time, I don't know how that board at LCCC thinks they're actually discharging their legal obligation, and I think they're open to a lawsuit for neglect of duty. And that was back in the days when you couldn't seem to figure out what was going on here because you had an executive that wasn't cooperative. And if policy governance means that, if it gives the executive so much power and so much discretion that they can actually basically get the board into a big fight and keep things from the board and so forth, then it is not a good way to govern. The policy and procedure style was what was here just before you came on, because it was when you came on, I think they had just... It was just right before, yeah. It was just right before you came on, and so you never got a taste of that. John Kaiser is the only one here who knows, has any experience with how the board ran in those days. And I'll just be honest with you, I think Chuck Boland saw that policy governance had some advantages for him, and he really wanted that, because if you remember, there were days when there were some board members who just would question Chuck Boland to no end, and he just got tired of it. He was looking for a policy that would say, if it's too much trouble, I want to be able to say no. So, that's my perspective on that. There are other models, too, for governance, and one comes from the state of Minnesota, which is Carleton College, Minnesota, and that has the most interesting style of governance. The board actually work with committees of faculty there, and they are the governing bodies of the college, so there are, your subcommittees, your board committees actually work with committees of faculty, and I don't know what they actually have for administrators, but it looks like faculty kind of roll in and out of administrative positions. And I thought that was pretty interesting. There's some other models too. I don't care what model we adopt. It's got to be credible. It has to be credible governance of the college, and that's my point.
Joe, were you about ready to say? I guess I asked you a question. Maybe you forgot.
Here's my opinion, my view from my experience. What you as a board, and especially what Dr. Kennedy seem to have an interest in is governing with an assurance, and assurance is created by awareness. Awareness of key functions and things that are happening on the campus. And they stem from the academic decisions, they stem from setting things like policies on faculty credentials. Traditional policy and procedure governance, they are your policies and procedures. And so as a function of those becoming your policies and procedures, the board is involved in setting those criteria, those expectations, and monitoring the key procedures versus policy governance where you say, Joe, this is what you shall not do. Yeah. And then it's up to you to go do it and stuff, and then you use these monitoring reports to figure out whether or not I'm actually doing it. It provides a separation. And with good discipline, good training, clear communication, credibility, as Kevin said, that's a very efficient model that keeps the board wrapped around the organization, outside, and focused on what we want to gonna take time to create the policies, structures, and things like that, it sounds like you wanna be involved and engaged, and traditional policy procedure governance allows you to do that. Now, I'll be the first to say that one of the things I would hope to do under that model is create, as I said during my interview process, a strong environment of shared governance amongst faculty and staff, so that those processes and major decisions are made in a collegial, collaborative environment and are advanced to you, because what I want to give you are recommendations on the end product that give you assurance that we've had the appropriate process, we've included the appropriate individuals, we've come to a sound, solid, institutionally committed decision, and you decide on that, you ratify it, and we go forth and do it. At the same time, I want to bring you the products, if you will, of what you believe your constituents elected you to ensure this campus was produced. And it's not vague interpretations of the end statements that you have. It's things like, are we graduating students? Are they being retained? Are they transferring? Are we helping students complete a GED? Whatever it is that we say this institution is going to do, that we can still do that and make sure that your attention is focused on those outcomes through a traditional policy procedure governance model. And just looking at the environment, the culture, where you're at, where I'm at, where our faculty and staff are at, I would suggest that's the best approach.
I can mention one other thing.
Go ahead.
There may come to be the argument that we have so much invested in this policy governance that we should continue down this road. And I would just warn you that that is a sunk cost. We should not, that should not enter our planning at all. What we should do is what we think will make the best functioning board and executive and what's best for the college and the students. And I tend to agree with Joe. We could almost go back. Our policies and procedures before have apparently become a mess, because I can find 3-ring binders on campus that are supposed to be filled with policies, and you find different policies in different people's offices. But it seems to me like there's a base of all of that work has already been done, and it's a matter largely of cleaning it up. And you have to remember, I was at LCCC in the mid-1990s for a couple of years and saw how the place operated. And then I came back in 2004 and saw how the place operated. And I can tell you that under the old method, LCCC operated pretty damn well. It was a good institution. And I carried that knowledge with me up to the Pacific Northwest and bragged and bragged and bragged about LCCC and how other community colleges should be like it. And then I came back here in the mid-2000s and saw the reality of this. I thought, did things change, or did I just not recognize what was going on here? And I think things changed. And I don't think policy governance helped. I think we've got the base of that, and it would be an enormous task to go back to it. And so I'm kind of in favor of your recommendation.
I have a very short comment. I don't like policy governance, and I don't want to do it. I just really don't. I don't think it's ever worked here. Because, and I think the biggest reason is I do think you need to get the board engaged, it's important, but because the board feels like they have a responsibility to engage. Now, how you set that up, I do not want to micromanage. I know what happened, and it was Elizabeth.
This is being straightened out.
I'm right. With Elizabeth, and I've heard the horror stories of going through lists of checks and getting into those type. That is absolutely not what I want to do. And I guess what I'm understanding, Joe, is there isn't board policy versus college policy. There's institutional policy. Period. Okay, that's what I want to do. I think that's the right thing to do. Because what happened, or what has happened, my experiences, is it has been used as, I won't be afraid to say it, as a weapon against us to probably not fulfill, and you're right, what our statutory duty is. And so, I'm not going to bring up the argument. It is a sunk cost, and I want to change. And the reality is we haven't been operating under policy governance. We have changed it and adapted to what, I'm not saying that it's worked great, but now that we do have a CEO or an executive, a president, etc., my expectations are that we can move and adapt and be and govern in the way that we feel comfortable and fulfill our duties. So that's my comment just now.
Mr. Chair, I agree with everything that you have said. And from a perspective of having been a past board chair, and I can tell you that the policy governance is very clunky, it is very difficult, and unless you're willing to be at a certain aerial feet, it doesn't really work. And I think being in Wyoming, being in a frontier state kind of atmosphere, having elected board members from a city of only 50,000 people, I don't think policy governance fits our personality or fits our needs. I think maybe if we were appointed board members in a very large city, that it might be more appropriate. But not with the kind of relationships that we have in Cheyenne, Wyoming. I don't think it works for us. And so I think it does make us too far removed. I think it makes us too clunky. I think the community's perspective of its credibility is very low, and I don't like it either. And I would like to explore something different that works for us.
I'm going to look at all the board members here because I'm looking for some consensus. Carol, your thoughts, feelings?
I've only been here 2 years, but it didn't work for me. It seemed like a lot of busy work. And I know the reason that happened. But I know that you're going to New York, and I know that you will be able to bring back some information for us on how to proceed with whatever we choose. And so I'm saying, let's go with this new one.
Bill? That's it?
Same.
Good.
Ed? I'm going to request comments from everybody.
I really feel strongly that we need to move to the traditional model. I think when you look at the reports, and having even worked with Miles this past year, the time that I think is not only involved on their part and others, it's not that we shouldn't solicit or have that kind of information, but a lot of times I would classify it as busy work, and it doesn't really provide us the information in many cases that we're seeking. We did tweak some of it. I know the last report was tweaked a little bit. Brenda had asked, I should say more than a little bit. It was significant work on that, but I think there are better ways to do it, and I would strongly support shifting to the traditional model.
Chairman, I think that what I know about this board and each member on it is that each of us wants to be more dynamically involved in this college. And I don't want to just sit on this board and not get to meet the people. I want to meet the people here. I want to meet the students and the staff. I want to know the people here. And so that's one way for us to do it, is to change to this way of governance.
Okay. Step number one, I guess you're getting some consensus, Joe, and some direction. How do we get there? And let's just open that conversation up. And I'll say just a couple things. One thing, and I look to you, Joe, is I think that what I don't want to do is micromanage. What I want to do, and you made a comment, and I don't know, because I've made it before, I think as an executive, you have the opportunity to use the talents of the folks on this board. Okay? Either if it relates to operational side, I mean, we have 2 former faculty people. Has there ever been faculty on the board? Yeah, ever. Okay, and other people have other talents, other people have other relationships, and it's just my feeling they have never been used. That's what I want. I want to feel like I have a purpose. I don't want to micromanage. So, with that, that's my perspective. I don't know what other people feel. How do we get down this road? And maybe Kevin, you have a good point. Maybe there is at the minimum, a skeleton to work from. Again, I always try to remember that Wyoming is not that unique. Somebody else already invented the wheel. We just got to go find the right one and adapt it. So,
Mr. Chairman, one quick comment. The nice thing about starting fresh, even when they have skills, is that we can develop together all of us policies and procedures that outline when and where the board is engaged. So we can set from the ground up when you get involved in the process and when you get involved in the processes. And I'll be the first one, and I know many people on this campus are hesitant about any type of change here, because there is a fear of the board getting too far into the weeds. And I'll be the first, I don't wanna see that happen either. That's why we need to work on policies and procedures to decide when and where, you will actually engage in the process. And I think there are some major processes where you can have conversations through committees that engage you with the people you wanna meet and you wanna learn, that can look at the design of how we, what expectations we have for our curriculum, what expectations we have for our faculty and for our staff criteria, what expectations we have for the allocation of our resources. And you can decide that as we put this together, where that is you involved and what those expectations are. And I want you to make sure that you're holding me in this institution accountable for meeting those expectations, not getting in there and trying to figure out how to do it necessarily. So we have the two opportunities. Trustee Little just told me we're going to be going to New York at the end of March, early April. I would actually encourage that perhaps before that we do set aside Saturday evening a significant amount of time. I can work with Dr. Boggs, who offered some suggestions, and bring in a facilitator who has taken boards and campuses through this. I know of two personally that have walked them through the conversation about governance and get the start of how you look at redoing policies and procedures to match the governance style. That will get us started. We can get that reaffirmed in New York, or if it happens slightly after that, so mid-April, it might be a little bit later than what I would prefer, but if that happens, we'll have, at least three of us that will be ready to contribute at a different level. Okay.
Greg, I've done some real intensive research and discussion about this at the conference in New York. That's why.
I think that we've gotten our dirty laundry on our policy governance here. Let's just nail down an action plan. I think that maybe my action plan is, Joe, and I know this is critical for you, that maybe you come back to us and you give me the time period again of just a recommended strategy to go through this. And I don't want to tell, you know more than I do about it. And it's not that I'm skirting the responsibility.
And the one thing
I'm loading a lot of stuff on you here, and maybe we, you need to feel comfortable with the timeline. Because if you tell me that I'm not comfortable doing it until May, I'm going to say, okay. I'm not. As I said to you, and it was only after we hired you that there's stuff. And LCCC is not unique. Any type of institution like this, there's things that have gone on for years and years and years, and you're not going to fix them in 6 months. You got to fix them in a year. You may not fix them in 5 years. I hope you will, but that's a little too far down the road.
We don't want to be 5-year plans.
Yeah.
That's the Soviet Union.
Well, there we go.
Well, one thing that, we should also keep in mind, there's a lot of things that are going on that are just fine.
Oh, absolutely.
So you don't need to.
Yeah, and I'm not negative about it at all. I really am not. It just seems like, sometimes we're chasing our tail. And what gets you frustrated is there's positive things going on and you kind of ignore them because you're so busy chasing your tail. And
Well, I just don't want to lose that perspective.
No, appreciate that. Thank you for that.
What date are you?
Well, I guess I think the deliverable is again, we're kind of looking at some planning and strategy. Joe, what do you think? Beginning of March?
Certainly we can
the
have.
month of February will be terrible for you if you're going to think you're going to get all this stuff done.
Yeah, saying that.
When are you going to New York?
End of March.
It's the end of March. The conference, our travel date would be March 28th, but the conference itself is the 29th through the 31st, right at the end of March.
Easter is the 7th, or the 8th, I think. My son's getting married the 14th, so
Okay.
you could do it on the 21st if you're going to choose a Saturday, or if you want to.
Well, I guess my thoughts here, there's a couple things, and I guess that's maybe, Joe, I guess what I'm really expecting, and maybe we can get it done by the middle of February, if it's a list of 10 bullet points, it says, here's what we ought to do. We ought to meet with a Boggs or a Boggs type.
Mm-hmm.
We need to send some folks to a formal training conference, and really not dive into the thing, do some preparatory things.
Yeah.
Because, we're operating okay now. I want you to feel comfortable that you have direction. Okay? I think that, and that's my responsibility.
That's fair, Mr. Chairman. The, you know, the unknowns we get at this point and that you should be aware of, and perhaps Lance can help us with this. I'm not even sure of the procedures and how you establish the different governance model, where that's been registered or adapted. Is that just in board policy, or where that is, or is there a significant process we'll have to go through to change that governance model? It sounds like it's just how you adopt policies and procedures, but I don't know the timeline of that. And so that's one thing I have to research, and I'd like to speak with a few folks that are out there, human resources, to see what they suggest. So they suggest that we go to New York and get, you know, a good grounding, then come back with a facilitator, or do we do that work up front, then go and then come back and look at implementation? So, you know, part of me says, yeah, I don't want to cram everything into February, March. Another part of me knows that until we start getting at the policies and procedures and the structure of the organization to facilitate those procedures, both your governance groups and the groups that currently exist, and you as the board, we can't make a whole lot of meaningful change in progress when we don't. So it is important, but you know, let me do some research. And I don't know, Lance, do you have any comments or thoughts on?
I think you've hit the nail right on the head in that we need to find out exactly what it is we're doing, because as the board knows, we've gone through rules publications and adopting rules. We would have to see what falls within the, you know, what we would have to do within the rules confines and what we would have to do through some other methodology. So I think it's a good idea just to get a good overview of this is what we want to do. Then we can figure out how we do it, how we implement it. That would be the easier part.
So I guess what I would look at is you know, I would say either at our February meeting or our study session in March. And my expectation wouldn't be real high, but if you would come back to the board, it could be just a bullet point list. Here's the things that I know need to be dealt with, and here's maybe a process to do that. Because what I'm thinking is it may behoove us to sit down and talk to somebody without having without being tainted by any conference or anything else. It probably does at the, you know, and then there's other things that can happen concurrently. You know, what are the legal aspects that we need to deal with? Maybe it's just the rules. I don't know. That's the work that we've done. So I guess that would be my expectation. So without putting too, and to give you a little bit of time to do research, I would look at what's our March meeting schedule?
It's the 7th and the 21st.
Okay. Would the 7th be a reasonable time? And you may find some things out, and you may come to us before that and say, hey, let's get this person in here for a day. And that's really what we got to do, and we can make that decision.
How about this? How about I give you an update at the February board meeting in regards to this? I'll have a better idea of what we can, but certainly by March we'll have a pretty clear roadmap of the things we're going to do and what we're going to do.
I guess you're getting our agenda set for the February meeting.
Yeah.
So I guess we'll just look on a report on our evolving our governance model is more what I'm going to call it.
March 7th.
Well, even that he'll give a report at the February meeting.
Oh, February.
Yeah. He's either come to us and go, well, this thing's way bigger than I thought, and I need time, or it's like, I got some good ideas, and let's take this action and this action, and we'll rock and roll.
For my own sanity and reassurance, although my list is getting big, this is just getting things in motion, not necessarily getting them accomplished.
Correct.
So it's very valuable.
Correct. So I guess I'm just going to call that, I'll call it just a preliminary plan, right? Plan outline is what I'll call it. That's what my expectations would be, Joe.
And what, Mr. Chairman, what I will try to do here in the very, very near future is somehow articulate these into a series of goals and objectives, personal goals and objectives for me that I will share with you, and hopefully that will then give you the clear marking.
Very good. Any other things we want Joe to do from there? I think that's all we need. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
It's inherent with it that, as you mentioned, seeing other people or pulling in other resources out there, there are other colleges in the state who do not operate under policy governance, who have the traditional model, which maybe a trustee or their president or something, maybe could be a part of the conversation we have.
Sure. Okay. Any public comment on governance?
Yay!
Did you get that? Y-E-A-A-A-A, apostrophe, apostrophe, or no, exclamation point, exclamation point, exclamation point.
That is such a positive move. I mean, I felt like I saw the word manipulated with the use of policy nomenclature.
I didn't see it, I felt it.
Yeah.
You were
Me
manipulating.
too.
Very
Okay. Okay, we are going to jump back to topic number 3, which is committees. Very quickly, I'll give you my thoughts on committees. I think the Facilities and Finance Committee is a committee that needs to always be there. That is one of these areas, and Joe, you articulated it very well, that there are various...
You used it so
I know that various Joe, you don't know the history about me getting down on academic language about a year ago. I just, when I raised my hand, I said, tell me what articulate means.
What was the other one? Transparency.
In transparency.
That's another one.
Another
Another thing.
definition of transparency. And I'll throw out another one. My opinion is this. I think there's a Facilities and Finance Committee meeting, and why is there Facilities and Finance together? Because it is, I've come to that conclusion being involved in the last couple of years. They are integrated. It is the group that does that. I believe there needs to be a Facilities and Finance Committee. Exactly what it does, we'll talk about that. So I think there's one. Unfortunately, we only have a board of 7. So you can't have 7 committees where you've got one person on a committee. And I think that this logic says to me, let's at least make 2. And that's kind of what we've done in the last couple of years. Now, the other committees, I am really up for some suggestions, and I think that we've got some pretty hard suggestions as to what those committees may be. One of those may be board governance, or a college governance committee, or a whatever you want to call it. I'm looking for suggestions.
I like that.
Organizational governance committee that actually does get some involvement in it and make sure that we implement what we're going to implement. Yes, Frank?
I'm just going to ask a question here. We had 3 committees last year. And did that work well? Or have some of those committees discharged their responsibilities and they need to be disbanded at this point? And do something?
I don't know, I throw that out. I guess I'm just throwing out, there's a couple ways to look at committees. You can have standing committees that stay the same all the time. And again, when you say stay the same, what does that mean? Is that just the same name, or is it the responsibilities of that committee? I claim that the responsibilities of a committee may change every year. Because in my mind, the Facilities and Finance Committee, I think there are 2 or 3, major things that they need to make sure get taken care of, and they may change from year to year. But the other committees that we did have.
Well, I just would like to be more involved with college communications and relations this year rather than institutional effectiveness, because I never felt when I was there that I could really figure out exactly what was going on. And Marlene put my reports together.
You weren't the only person.
Ed knew, because he was here more, knew better what was going on. But like those reports and stuff, they were out of my realm. And I just...
Well, and I agree with you, Bill. I think that's a lot internal in terms of it at a level that maybe we need to be aware of, but I'm not sure that was best use of our time. And my recommendation, I mentioned it to a couple others, is especially with this organizational audit, I think when we look at effectiveness planning, I would think we're looking at the organizational audit, implementation, some of those kinds of things really should be our focus. And I don't know how we look at AQUIP from there, but I think from time to time that could be visited. But that would kind of be my perception of the change for that committee.
And I guess I'd like to throw out what I think are big topics, and some of them I did not think about.
2 weeks ago. I had not thought about them, they just come about through some of the interactions I've had. I'm gonna go back to this foundation, fundraising, campaign, whatever campaign it may be. That's a topic that needs to be dealt with. And I think by the board, because at some level. So I throw that out as another committee topic. We do not have a good relationship.
You had 3 people who go to every foundation meeting and are directly involved. So to me, they're the ones that should, if you have things and ideas, they're the ones that should handle it, Greg.
Okay.
I don't think you need to assign 3 more people to do it. I think the 3 of us that are there can do it. If you have ideas that you want accomplished.
Here's my problem with that. It's not going to get accomplished going to a quarterly meeting.
Well, do other things then with it.
Yeah.
I don't think that you need a separate committee.
I'm not necessarily saying that it's separate. It may be those 3 people.
Well,
but I think the topic. No, I know that. But I'm just telling you. What I'm trying to throw out is the topics. What's important? There's a few things I'm going to try to juggle here. One is I want to get people to do something they want to do, just like you said. I really do. I want to make sure that we're doing something that's important. Yeah. Okay? And that's really my kind of criteria. I'm just really open. I'm just going to throw out what I think are some things that are important. I don't think there's been a good relationship. I don't think we have given guidance to the foundation appropriately since I've been on the board. And some comments I hear is that they're waiting for us to give us guidance. And it needs to come from us. They are an organization that supports us. It doesn't go the other way around. And they're kind of waiting for direction from us. I don't think we've done that effectively. So I look at that as being very important because it combines with facilities. I'm not saying that they're the same thing, but we don't, I can't say I've done a lot of research, but I have run across, other foundations that work with community colleges, and they're much tighter in how they do things. And I want to explore that. I really do. And I don't know if it's being a representative on their board. I mean, we met with Ron Rabo the other day, and I said, Ron, I think what you need to do that will help you guys out a lot is you need to have somebody on our board. And I think that we need, look, if we have the power to get another ex officio, just like we did with the Albany County campus, that may be, that's, I can just tell you that's something I got thrown out to him, and we'll see what they do with that. But I think that whole board foundation relationship and how that gets down to the nitty-gritty of how it operates is a topic that the board should take responsibility. That's one. The human relations side, I don't know. Do you want to delve into that again?
You mentioned 4 points here: finance and facilities, which you say is just a standing issue. And
well, I won't say it's so much standing. I guess that label, there's an activity that occurs there that I think the board needs to at least have awareness and get input on.
But it sounded like the others were governance. Which
I think governance, mainly because it's coming up.
A committee that would have a fairly short lifetime. We hope so. That it would go on for too long, maybe a year or something like that.
It could be 2.
Organization and structure, another one that has a very short life. And then you talked about promotion and capital funding. I don't know. That sounds to me longer term, a year or something like that. But I'm just thinking that about 3 of these committees work pretty well. I don't know if we can handle them.
No, I don't want more than 3. I think that there's got to be 2 people to a committee, and more than that's not a matter of more than that. I think you get overwhelmed. You can only make so many meetings in a month. So, Joe, you seem like you're.
Well, Mr. Chairman, if I could hesitantly offer maybe an alternative perspective, and maybe you're getting there. As you move and make a decision to a governance model, and as you decide as a board what processes and at what point in those processes you want to get engaged, in many ways that will dictate the types of committees that you will create. So, for example, if you want to be, and I'm assuming you will continue to want to be intimately involved with the development and approval of the institution's budget, Finance Committee makes a whole lot of sense. If you have a role, and I'm assuming you will want to, in the understanding of the development and approval of academic programs, probably want a committee that deals with academic affairs and those types of things. If you have and want an interest in the development and approval of human resource elements, whether it's the appointment of personnel versus the establishment of employee evaluation or review criteria, you may want a human resource or a staffing committee. So in many ways, I'm not suggesting you hold off on the creation of the assignment of committees. Some of those things will come out as we move through it. I think your recommendation about facilities and finance continuing, I mean, we're going to have to set a budget for next year regardless. And we should start moving, like you said, on the facilities. That's got to be happening. If you take Dr. Kilton's advice, I think it was advice that instead of forming standing committees at this point, we look at ad hoc committees to address the issues that are of major importance now, governance, organizational structure, and perhaps foundation relations, or whatever you want to call it. That may get us to that point.
I agree. Okay. Ad hoc is what I want to do. I'm not.
Yeah.
What I don't want to have happen is you got a committee that doesn't have a purpose.
Yeah, yeah.
And again, labels doesn't necessarily dictate what the committee does. It's going to be the board and the chairman saying, here's what you need. You know, I want to make sure they have a fair budget process and make sure that we understand the budget so we can make a good decision. That's what I would charge facilities. And maybe there's a finance and maybe there's a facility. I don't know. I'm looking for suggestions. So, yes, ma'am.
I think I heard already that we have two ad hoc committees that are pretty much set up, that facilities and finance. And then didn't we have an ed on this HR and staffing committee? Didn't we talk about that already, that they would be serving with Joe on that for some direction? Did I not hear that?
We talked about something like that.
Something
Yeah,
like that.
that
But
has
it's
to do with
committee.
policy governance reports.
Tonight, I thought I heard
tonight.
they were gonna assist you.
What I asked is that the board would be open to working with me on specific issues.
Right.
I wasn't making a formalized
That's what I was thinking,
committees.
maybe we do that. Maybe not.
Yeah.
Or the other thing is we don't have to have committees. But we do need some I mean, I think, like I said, I feel very strongly because before we had a facilities and finance committee, none of us knew anything about what went on with finances. Is it? I never liked that. I never liked that.
I like the academic affairs concept, and ad hoc that we can begin with, and I think imperative with all the pressure that schools are getting on completion rates and what that really means, how we're going to be assessed as community colleges in that respect. And quality programs they're part of that, so I really see that. I don't know, you would want to flesh out for us probably what you're seeing as academic affairs. That's kind of my perception. I think some of that restructuring goes into that because part of that is the academic divisions and support.
Mr. Chairman, in many ways, it depends on how you as a board want to be engaged over the next, let's say, 6 to 8 months. You could certainly create ad hoc committees if you wanted to do that. I don't know how productive or how I would help you drive the agenda of those committees. Again, I see the facilities and the finance one is something that there's work to be done. It isn't going to change, right? You could certainly establish a governance committee, or you could work together as needed individually and charge me with bringing you what you need. If you want that vetted through a governance committee before it comes to the full board, that's fine. I'm just sort of trying to figure out how you want to be engaged. If it's simply so that you are aware and involved, I think you might come to hear publicly that you will be. I'm just trying to figure out how you will utilize or engage those committees and what would your agenda look like?
Yes, ma'am.
I have a personal interest in doing something like a governance committee. and I think it should be ad hoc, I don't think it needs to last forever. But how I would envision that is being one of two people that does some very specific research and on different governance models, who has what's working, what's not working. We're getting with Joe and getting his input on what would work with him, what he sees as maybe a danger zone. But that's how I see that committee is just focusing and then coming back to the board saying, this is what I discovered. What do you think?
Okay. Because I think, I mean, our initial purpose on these committees was really two. One, it was awareness because we had zero. Okay, that's one reason why we did it. The second one is that we did want, what we've said several times, is we wanted to be, not necessarily make decisions, but be formally charged with making sure that we were aware and to report back to the board. And I probably believe that ought to be the functions of the committees, and I think you're correct, Joe. As we move through evolving a governance model that we think is going to work, it will become apparent where we need touch and awareness and so on, and then you change to accommodate that. Yeah. So I guess what I'm looking for, I'd like to see 3 committees. I'm looking for the topics that we think that we want to do. Because I will tell you, even though I think, even though there isn't a committee, there will be other topics and they will be addressed, and that's why we have him as an employee, and that's why we're here, because we're not going to drop certain things. We're just not going to do it. So I'm looking for suggestions now, and it's probably right. Maybe we just say that these committees will be in place. Probably safe to say, and we could say even initially, we could set a time limit on it or make it just the natural time limit through the time new board members do get elected. Yeah. It's not that far down the road. So I guess I would say that a Facilities and Finance Committee. I would say a Governance Committee. Yeah. And the third one, I'm open. Some of the things like, academic affairs, I don't know if we're ready to dive into that because I think some changes need to happen. That there's nothing that your awareness is going to be, well, I don't know, but I want to know what what everybody else thinks is important. I think the governance things is important, and I think that, Joe, if you're agreeable to it, I mean, they're your resource to use, and they're also, one of their objectives would be to report directly back to the board to go, here's what's going on, and we're moving forward like we said.
Well, your other one is college communications and relations like it is now. It would seem to me that one could also include the efforts and work that needs to go that you're looking at with regards to the foundation. Okay. Because that is college relations.
Absolutely, it is. It is. Okay. So I guess what I'm hearing is we got Facilities and Finance, we got a Governance, and we got, what was that kind of?
What do you think, Carol?
Communications and Relations.
All along.
I have, and I think what happened when I was on that committee is we had a mission. We had something very specific to accomplish.
You had to go out and find Joe.
Yeah, well, exactly. Find Joe.
Yeah. Well, I guess I got a two-tiered to let you know, there is a two-tiered approach here. I want to get an idea what the committee is, and then I want to talk what are the couple of very specific, because I think there's some specific things we would like to see as outcomes. So if people feel that, I'll make it just shorter, just call it Communications and Relations.
And that committee could encompass the promotion and capital funding.
What I would probably suggest is if those are 3 categories that we think are important, then I would like to get some feel as for where people want to be involved. And then I would meet with you, and I would probably not try to bite off more than anybody can chew. Well, look, here's 3 main things that we think ought to happen. You report to the board says, I think that's a good thing, and then you're off and running. So, does that sound reasonable to folks, okay? Those 3?
Yeah, do you want anything with the org audit, or do you want to wait until
I think the org audit's got to come out of Joe.
Joe's PM.
Yeah, for now. then I guess, you know, without any specific charges or objectives, I mean, if Brenda would like to be on the governance, anybody else want to be on the governance? Or I'll go around and say, what would you like to be in? I want to get 2 other people involved, not myself, in the facilities and finance. Who wants to be on facilities and finance? Okay. All right, so I got 2 out of...
We'll take John Kaiser on our committee, on my committee. I'll take John.
For governance, okay. That's what happens when we don't make it, if we're not here.
Unless somebody else wants it, unless somebody else wants it. Joe suggested that because he's going to New York also, and I think that's a good suggestion.
Yeah, I think you're right. The 3 that are going to the election are. Okay.
Facilities and finance, Ed, would you like to be involved in that?
Yes.
Okay. Do I have any other takers on facilities and finance? Step out of your comfort levels here, folks.
I'm comfortable with facilities and finance.
Okay. Would you like, or I mean, what would you like to do? I've got the communications one.
You know, I'm happy working any place where people see me as useful. And so.
Wow, you're going to give me that much
I don't have real specific interests in anything, so I'm happy to work on anything.
Well, since Carol and Bill are already on the foundation, right? Maybe that can-
We are, but we are going, I know that we are going to need some guidance because I think we have got to work with the foundation to get them going in the direction that we need them to go in because we've been disconnected.
I understand.
Yeah.
Very
And that's, and I'm going to be really truthful with you with that. We'll probably will be involved in very heavily on that because I think it's a major topic. We just have an opportunity. They're at the point where they want. They pretty much came out and said we need help.
New chairman.
Yeah, they've got a new executive director. They got Ron, who's pretty open, and it's an opportunity, and we need to belly up to the ball.
Sure. I think that's
Maybe we don't want to say give them. I mean, quite frankly, yeah, we do. We need to give them. They need to know what our objectives are because it says right in their governing documents. We need to know what the college's objectives are, so we know what ours are. We haven't done a good job of that.
No.
Well, for now, pencil me in on the finance.
Both facilities and finance.
You're
And pencil me in.
Ed and Kevin on the same committee.
Oh my God.
Wow.
That's scary.
I don't think the college is going to like it at all.
Poor Carol's going to have to deal with these ex-faculty guys. Oh boy. You comfortable with that, Bill?
Yes.
It's okay. Okay. So let's do that, and I will make arrangements to meet with the committees within the next. We'll just have to see what our time frame is, but over the next couple, 3 weeks, and we'll formulate specific tasks, suggestions, and we'll get those communicated and move forward. Okay. All right. Wow. No, it's not. We have one last topic, and that is Miles LaRoe's recommendation letter.
Oh.
We have been through it, but we just said, let's put it off till Jill gets here.
Appreciate that. You know, Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
that we have this evening discussed an awful lot of this matter.
I know that. I know that.
But
Maybe
I
we
think
should
we should just look at what we haven't.
Really, and then I think that's a great approach. I think the reason I wanted to do this, yes.
Mr. Chairman, do you want to add that to your agenda for the next business meeting to make sure you formalize who's
Yes.
on the committees and that?
Yes.
Just so we-
Oh.
Yes, thank you. Here's some copies of that letter if people would like them, and they're public.
I didn't bring them.
Okay.
Thank you for that.
I got them.
Here. We need more, we'll go get some.
We have really covered a lot of.
Yeah. I mean, that's why I wanted it last. It's kind of a wrap up. You know, Miles did sit down and go through this one evening, and we just kind of sat and listened. And, you know, I guess we can't use that excuse. Wait till Joe gets here anymore.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to go through the topics, and you're right, there's a variety of them we've already addressed, and we'll catch the ones that we haven't. Miles, and I'll just, he goes, here's a variety of suggestions that can be used to direct possible college actions or disregarded as the board of the new president see fit. Obviously, we're not disregarding them because we're looking at it. So he recommends the following, and he's got some topics, okay? College governance, repeal policy governance, adopt traditional, okay? Check, talked about it. Revise, rewrite, blah, blah. You got that. Clearly defined board and presidential roles. I think we've talked about that. And engage in continuous board education and training. We haven't necessarily talked about that. How do we not forget about it? Or is that just going to be part of? Yes, sir.
I don't think we haven't. We have talked about it.
Yeah.
Because that's part of the process that we're going to go through as we move to the traditional.
Okay, fine. Okay. I want to give everything its due here, that make sure, and I really do, because he did come up with a variety of things, and I wanted to make sure that we address those. Aggressively pursue the 2011 Facilities Master Plan objectives. I think that we talked about that. Eliminate Cheyenne campus industrial park appearances through demolition, renovation, or new construction. We talked about that. That's one of Joe's tasks, kind of. Invest resources so as to further landscape the Cheyenne. There we go. Joe?
Yeah, get out your shovel.
This is an interesting one. Acquire property south of College Drive from the Lummis family. Okay, noted.
Do the Lummises know about this?
I don't know. Yeah, the price just went up.
That's exactly.
Engage aggressively in new building construction. We've talked about that. Okay. Acquire a presidential home for residential and college use. We talked about it once.
But I think I think he was proposing was a foundation house downtown that would have functions there.
Okay.
And, I mean, maybe that's not one and the same here, but that's really what
Well,
was
no, and I agree with you. That is kind of what he was talking about. And what I am going to say, that is part of our deal with foundation, is to talk about what is the best way for us to
be visible,
work together and be visible. Okay? So I'm going to say that's going to get covered through the community.
And
Build a large Albany County Center of the University of Wyoming campus. And you know what? I was a little remiss. We did not really talk about Albany County, because that is a major piece of our master plan. And maybe we can throw it out there. I mean, Joe and I have talked about it. You seem to think that we're going to get either hogtied or we're stupid not to do it, but to address those two topics of the UW building and the potential UW LCCC presence on UW campus.
When we engage UW in conversations, we should view those both. And this is another one of those that have incredible positive impact on LCCC, and we could probably get it done with a very appealing arrangement that we appreciate. So I would see that coming out as part of that initial facilities expansion renovation.
Okay. Now, this also did remind me of something I did want to say when we were talking about the master plan, and Kevin and I have chatted about it, and I'm just going to bring it back up. I think as part of our strategy in regards to UW and offering four-year programs, or what kind programs, University of Wyoming programs here at LCCC, I see no reason that we cannot move forward with strategizing on developing those programs. I don't care if we have a building or not. There we go. And I think that's a conversation that we have with the university as well. You know what? Why don't we have a BN in nursing here at LCCC? How can we make that happen? We'll make it happen. We'll find the place. We need to do that. Because what I truly believe, when we sell this thing, if we already have programs in place, it's a real easy sell.
and be successful. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. An issue we had in terms of running programs here on campus, but we did have a bachelor's degree that was offered here on campus through the University of Wyoming. It was an office administration program where the students could, after they graduated to our office program, they continued to that and received their bachelor's, and they did all their work here, and faculty came over. The problem, even with that program at the time, continuation was faculty from UW
guess if there's a need and you can rumble up the class, I'm gonna hire somebody to come here. My point is this, the physical facility doesn't need to be here. There is no rule that the physical facility has to be here before the program is.
And that was my point, you didn't have.
You guys agree with that? And that'll be our initial when whoever, probably the Facility and Finance Committee, myself and Joe will go over and have a chat.
I had dinner with the regents at UW, and I put out a great question to them, and I said, yeah,
let's hold it back.
Perfectly good suggestion. Nothing holding it back.
Okay. All right. Well, that just reminded me because that needs to happen. I really do believe that get the program going and the rest will come. So we won't forget about that. From a finance side, establish a dynamic 2012-2013 budget.
What does that mean,
Again,
dynamic?
what's your definition of dynamic? You know what? I do recall what he meant by dynamic. And it kind of relates to what we talked about in our master plan. It meant to make sure that we had resources to make moves that we need to make to propose projects.
I have a note break that says additional mill should go for it.
Well, that would be the funding side of it, yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's your responsibility to make sure this happens.
I agree.
Those bills.
But I'm just trying to explain his point. His point is kind of what I'm saying is, you know what? If we want to get phase 2 planning done for UW building, we better budget for it and make it happen.
Right.
That's what he was talking about. He said,
Yeah.
you've got to have some money allocated to be able to make moves that maybe you didn't think about 6 months ago. We do it, people. It's just we don't think about it up front. We do it. I'm telling you, we find ways to do things after the fact. And I guess what we're saying here is have an understanding what you may need to do and allocate some resources for that. Okay, so he did that. Pursue funding for new college buildings via legislature. We talked about it. Pursue legislative funding for increased salaries and benefits.
I thought it was interesting this afternoon in the email that came from John, that we have some people in the legislature who view any attempt on our part to get money out of the state as a Trojan horse for salaries and benefits. And that's kind of interesting. Where will additional salaries and benefits come from? I'm not sure. Because really the state money coming to us has been the backbone of increased salaries and benefits for quite a while.
But we just have to understand our funding model in the state of Wyoming. We don't have local taxes relative to other places, so we are funded by local taxes coming from the state. Good suggestion. I think we should be doing that at all times. Practice sound financial operations through college. Noted. Engage foundation and college goals, plans, operations, fundraising. All of that. We're going to move on that. From a political side, maintain and nurture positive and active relationships with the governor, Laramie and Albany County legislators and the Wyoming Community College Commission. Okay? On my list. It's on the list. Nurture positive relations with Laramie and Albany County citizens group for positive college conduct, productivity, and improved college reach. On Joe's list. Our list too. Ensure that the next new community college funding formula favors college. I don't know that much about it.
On my list too.
Okay?
With the J on all these.
Personnel-wise, adopt appropriate organizational audit, presidential search, consultant recommendations, and examine all related information. Done. Or working on. Acquire more full-time, highly qualified faculty. Okay. Retain and hire only highly qualified professionals at all levels. We decree policy and values. Okay? Decree. We decree. Okay, and his last area, quality and expansion, improve college image in all aspects, including incorporating more traditional college activities and increasing public relation activities. Okay. Improve college campus image via new construction, renovation, landscaping, okay?
That shovel
See
again,
about-
Joe. Keep sucking up.
Improve college morale and climate with quality leadership at all levels. Appropriate raises, civil treatment, and a return to the institution of pride. I hope that we can do that. I'm not going to cry.
Honestly, with Joe here and that everyone said he's a dreaded spring, well, I think Friday night was a perfect example of how this is coming about.
I agree. That's great. Okay, build a large new Albany County Center on the university campus. Check. Improve graduation with quality speakers, flawless ceremonies, and programs.
Carol's taking care of that.
Carol, that's your pet project?
I think it's so important.
And Carol, I'm supposed to let you know that in President's Cabinet, we talked, and I should have recommendations from the students of who will want to invite a speaker here next week, I think, if I remember.
I'm happy.
So, there.
I'll bring it up again though.
I know you're
Increase credit student enrollments. Okay. Emphasize quality as a major value of the college. Well noted. Establish a new presidential job description with a focus on dynamic leadership.
Dynamic.
Oh my God.
Dynamic budgets and
I think Joe's on that one.
be dynamic around here.
Involving college image and integrity, state and local politics, public relations, college growth, fundraising, and more.
Fundraising.
See that above.
Yeah.
Yes. Insist on student success. And lastly, insist on superior quality college conduct and performance. See about it.
Good.
Okay.
Yes.
He did.
Yeah.
And I did want to, not to say that I'm closing the book on Miles, I did want to make sure that we did go through that.
I'm glad.
When we
Good reminders.
had the ability to talk about a variety of things. Yes, sir.
Bill brought it up. But Friday night was a great evening. It really was. And the foundation deserves a big thanks
Yes.
for going to all the work. I think Vicki worked very hard on it. There are a number of other people I'm even unaware of who worked hard on it. I found it absolutely fascinating. I've never seen anything like this up close. But the nearest thing I can compare it to is a comet going around the sun. Wherever Joe went in the room,
Yes.
there was a tail of people that followed him, wanting to talk to him, and I think they were always pointing away from the sun. So I'm pretty sure that's what it was.
Wait for a year and then there'll be a tail of people running away.
What direction are they facing? Well, all I can say is right now, and this goes a long way toward reestablishing connection with the community and a lot of other people, is the place has got Joe fever, and I'm curious how long it will last. I've never seen anything like it, as I said.
And I think,
You know, it was wonderful to see there's such a mixture of people.
yeah.
And the only thing I feel badly about it is Joe didn't get to eat. Because the food was fabulous. And I started getting get to eat.
I smelled it all night long. But I will tell you, don't mention it to my wife because it's a very sensitive topic with her.
Did she get to eat?
No, she could have, but she was trying to play the part. And we just kept turning around looking at him slicing that bear meat. Shaking hands while we're drooling. I will say that